we've got them now to where you don't need to jump on, yeah, a good like 5 or 6 inches.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be good. Keep going.
Hello, everyone. That working okay? Okay. Better? Good. We'll just do like that. Good. Good. Yep. Everyone ready to go? Holding on 1 second. Awesome. If we are ready to go, thank you everybody for joining us. Today is Tuesday, February 25th, 2025, and this is a special governing board meeting for the Litchfield Elementary School District. I hereby call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda will be the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could please stand and join us. Next, we will take a moment of silent reflection. Okay, thank you. Next, we are going to move on to public comment. I'm going to read this little disclaimer. Pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes ARS 38-431.01H, this agenda item provides an open call to the public, allowing individuals to address the governing board on any issue within the jurisdiction of the board. Items not listed on the agenda may be brought to the governing board's attention under this section of the agenda. Due to the Arizona open meeting law, the governing board cannot discuss or take any action on items not listed on the agenda. Therefore, pursuant to ARS 38-431.01H, response to public comment about matters not appearing on the agenda will be limited to individual board members who may ask the staff to study the matter, respond to any criticism, or ask that the matter be put on a future agenda for further consideration and decision at a later date. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes, and no more than 30 minutes will be devoted to the public comment portion of the agenda. When you approach the podium, please state your name for the record. We have two speakers tonight. Our first speaker will be Ms. Shelley Smith.
Push. There we are. My name is Shelley Smith, and on behalf of a Little Drama, Theater Arts, and Dance and Color Wheels, I want to extend my gratitude for your recommendation to keep the facility fees for classroom rentals at $20 an hour. Your continued support allows us to provide quality theater and visual arts education to the students of this district, and we could not do it without your generosity and commitment to the arts. I am proud to share that 64 students are currently enrolled in my production of The Wizard of Oz, 58 whom are from Litchfield Elementary School District. All of the students have been working very hard and they're eager to perform. To show my appreciation, I would love to invite each of you to our upcoming production of The Wizard of Oz on Saturday, March 29th at Litchfield Park Arts Center at the Thomas on Old Litchfield and Indian School Road. The doors are going to open at 6 o'clock. This production is a labor of love from our students, and I would be honored to have you there to witness their incredible work they have put in. Both Betsy and I thank you again for your dedication to our students and the arts in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is going to be Betsy Etchert.
Good evening. My name is Betsy Etchart. I am with Color Wheels. Again, I want to thank you as well for the recommendation of keeping the facility fees at $20. I'm not going to say any more. I think that Shelley said it really well. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we are going to move on to the adoption of agenda and approval of consent agenda. I'll go through and see if anybody has anything that they would like us to pull from the consent agenda. Today, I will start with Ms. Moran.
Yes, I would like to pull item 5.6, the request for out-of-state travel.
Mr. Mikes,
No, I'm fine.
Mr. Owens,
Nothing for me. Thanks.
Ms. Wallace.
No, nothing for me. Thank you.
Okay, if someone would like to make a motion.
I move to, oops. Sorry. I move to adopt the agenda as presented minus item 5.6 as presented.
I will second.
Having a motion for Mr. Owens and a second for Ms. Moran, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Moran,
Yay.
Mr. Mikes,
Yay.
Mr. Owens,
Yay.
Ms. Wallace.
Yay.
I'm a yay. Motion passes. Okay. We will now move on to, I guess this will be 6.1 for out-of-state travel. I'll let Ms. Moran start with that since she's pulled it off.
Yes, I pulled this item for a couple of reasons. The first is I would like to know more information about the benefits of attending this professional development experience. I'm just not familiar with the organization.
Madam President, Ms. Moran, certainly I could speak to this professional development opportunity, but I think Mr. Nuanez would probably be better to share public relations, the work they do, and its connection to this NASPER conference. So thank you.
Governing Board Moran and fellow governing board members. The NSPRA is the National School Public Relations Association, which is the next level up, the national level of the professional development that our communications team goes to here at the state level, which is the Arizona ASPRA. This is attended by all communications people from across the nation. So this is a tremendous opportunity to collaborate, bounce ideas, and really just grow in our processes and our strategic communications plans as we move forward, and just to see what other people are doing across the country. This is the kind of the gold chalice of all the professional development for communications professionals in school PR.
Okay, thank you for that. I do appreciate the opportunity to learn some tips and tricks at the national level. We've obviously invested money into our enhanced communication through Parent Square and through expanding our PR department here in the district. I know there is another portion of this trip that is related to an award for Dr. Davidson. Can you tell me a little bit more about that part?
Yes, ma'am. The award that was awarded to Dr. Davidson is called Superintendents to Watch For. As it was for superintendents that had 5 years or less. Dr. Davidson has done such an amazing job working with me as far as, when we came on, we wanted to make sure that we got him out in front of the community so that we could start building that trust level with our community. They could get to know him. He is adapted to that process extremely well. Whether it was, being able to, get him onto social media, doing his videos and communicating, not only just the great stories that are happening here, but keeping our community updated with, the important and pertinent issues that we deal with here in this district. I thought that this was a great opportunity, so I moved forward and nominated him. And I figured at the beginning that he was pretty much a shoo-in because he is really great at the communications, not only at helping strategize on them, but also in participating in them and helping getting those messages across.
Okay, thank you for that additional information. I don't want to get into the weeds on this request because I know the reason that it's coming to us is strictly because we have to approve all out-of-state travel based on policy. Obviously, there's money in the budget or it wouldn't have been brought to us. My only word of caution, and I do support this action, so I'm not trying to say that I don't, but my only word of caution is requests. We have gotten in the last year more out-of-state travel requests than we've ever had before. Again, I'm not opposed to that. They're going for great, school safety ideas, all sorts of things that our teachers and our staff are getting to go to enhance their level of knowledge that's impacting, I believe, positively student success. I would just caution that we be really selective in these opportunities. And again, I'm not saying that you're not selective in this particular one. I've just seen more of this lately. And so there may come a point in time where we as a board, or me personally, may ask to see, how many days are staff members spending at PD versus in our district. We know that we allow a lot of time for our teachers, but and again, I think there can be positives that come out of that. So I'm just saying that as a caution for future requests, because I think we've all seen the headlines where other districts have come under scrutiny for their dollar spending, as well as the time that they've spent potentially away from their, everyday duties, which, there's a lot of conversation that can be had around that. So thank you for the additional explanation. And I don't have any other questions on this topic.
Mr. Mikes, did you have any questions or comments about this item?
No, just, to echo some of the things Ms. Moran said in regards to, as far as when we look at costs and use of funds to go when we're going out of state. However, additionally, there's great opportunities to see, and it's kind of a celebratory piece as well for the award and a chance to expand and bring back some knowledge from what other districts are doing across the country. It's great with that. So, but you answered a bunch of the questions that I had through your explanation, so I appreciate that.
If I could just also add real quick, just with the current environment that's kind of that we're facing with a lot of our messaging, there's kind of a lot of unknowns of where we're headed as far as some of the things that are coming down from the federal level. So there's a lot of communication and collaboration going around not only districts within our state, but nationally as well. And this is going to be a great opportunity to see how other districts are addressing those issues.
Mr. Owens?
Yeah, I think as we've tried to address with early release, the professional development and the PLCs with our teachers, it's important that our administrators and executive staff have those opportunities as well. I know out of travel seems fun, and it can be, but it's also time away from your family. And so you're making a commitment to travel to experience these opportunities and learn these to bring back to our district. So I think a healthy balance is good. And so if it's something that Dr. Davidson feels is appropriate and a good use of funds, then I support it.
Ms. Wallace?
Congratulations on being nominated for that award. That's awesome. And I have no other questions. I just read through the schedule at a glance. It looks like it's packed full of great things. So can't wait to hear all the great things that you learn there.
I don't have any questions. I know that our communications team has not really done a lot of the professional development that some of our other executive directors have been able to do. So I'm glad that we're going to be able to let you guys go do this conference and also celebrate our amazing superintendent, which I was very happy to write a letter of recommendation for this award. So it's very exciting that he's going to be able to be honored for all the work that he's doing here with your team and with everybody here in our district. So I am fully in support of you guys doing this. And I do agree with what you're saying about this unknowns of what's happening right now, and trying to have a unified messaging for schools across our nation is really helpful. So I'm excited to see what you guys are able to learn at this and bring back to us. With that, if someone would like to make a motion.
I move to approve item 6.1 as presented.
Second.
Having a motion from Ms. Moran and a second from Mr. Owens, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Moran?
Yay.
Mr. Mikes?
Yeah.
Mr. Owens?
Yay.
Ms. Wallace?
Yay.
I'm also a yay. Motion passes. Okay, we are going to move on now to our action items. The first item is going to be 7.1, which is to temporarily suspension of policy BEDBA agenda preparation and dissemination. This is going to be led by Dr. Davidson, but really it comes because of our conversation that we had last meeting about how we might need more time to get the information that we need to do teacher contracts, but I'll let Dr. Davidson.
Thank you. Thank you, President Zinema and members of the board. Ms. Zinema already did share the recommended action, and to her point, right now our policy BEDBA requires that we submit all of our materials to the board for review 48 hours prior to the meeting or sooner. We believe that we'll get our final bits of information regarding our current ASBATE insurance renewal roughly around March 3rd, with the desire to bring that to the board on March 6th. But we do want to have Mr. Vaughn and Ms. Satterfield give them time to process that and put it all together for that 6th presentation and potential vote around our benefits package. So that's the request tonight for our governing board to please suspend that for just the one meeting only. And I'll stand for any questions.
Ms. Moran, did you have any questions?
So you're saying Michael can't just wave a magic wand and like drop those numbers in there? No, I don't have any questions. Thanks.
Ms.
Mr.
Moran,
Mikes?
Ms. Moran, I do believe he could, but I think we need to be safe on this one.
Mr. Mikes?
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Owens?
None from me.
Ms. Wallace?
No questions.
I don't have any questions either. I asked us to do this, so we're good. If somebody would like to make a motion.
I move to temporarily suspend policy BEDBA as presented.
I will second.
Having a motion from Mr. Owens and a second from Ms. Moran, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Moran?
Yay.
Mr. Mikes?
Yay.
Mr. Owens?
Yay.
Ms. Wallace?
Yay.
I'm also a yay. Motion passes. Okay, we are going to move on next to the approval of the master lease agreement between Litchfield Elementary School District and Apple Incorporated. This will be by our CFO Vaughn.
Madam President, members of the governing board, Superintendent Davidson, colleagues and community, thank you for joining us tonight to discuss our opportunity to expedite our replenishment cycle of staff laptops. Across our district this year, we've made an effort to better define our replenishment cycle for large capital purchases, such as staff laptops. We're starting here for several reasons. First, we believe it's of strategic importance that our teachers have the resources they need to best manage their classrooms. Second, we found that the older staff laptops on our network are slowing down our internet connection for all devices. We presently have many staff laptops that are older than 2017. This lease with Apple is a great opportunity to bring definition to our replenishment cycle for staff devices. It is structured to allow full replacement of all staff devices prior to next school year, but to pay for those devices over a 4-year period, which will define our replenishment cycle for staff devices. The lease is at a 0% interest rate, and the devices are priced in accordance with the cooperative contract that the district would otherwise use to purchase devices outside of this leasing arrangement. As a result, this financing is at no additional cost to the district. However, it does allow us to replace all staff devices at once versus gradually over several years. The team and I are available to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Ms. Moran.
I have 2 questions to start. I might come up with more, but the first question is, how does this arrangement compare to our previous replenishment plan?
So previously, and this is how a lot of the capital spending in Litchfield works, the large departments, because that's where most of the capital spending ends up living, puts together a capital plan each year and bring that to a committee, the capital committee, that includes representatives that are principals. It includes a lot of the other directors to make sure everyone's on the same page, because many times capital projects impact more than one area, as well as finance staff to make sure that we stay on track. And so previously, it was we were buying a certain number of devices each year to try to keep up on a replenishment cycle. What we found when we really dug into that is that while we were allocating funds to do that, potentially we weren't always as strategic as we should have been around which devices got replaced, which is why I can say to you that we have some of those devices that are older than 2017. Ideally, they would have been, ideally you would have a last in, first out model, but that doesn't appear to be how it was implemented.
Okay. My second question is, can you tell me a little bit more about where this funding is coming from? Because I hear you saying we probably wouldn't have replaced all of them in a 4-year time frame. So I just want to make sure that we're, being smart about this.
So our normal replenishment cycle, how much money we were allocating would have actually had us replacing all devices over a 5-year time frame. So it is slightly expedited. We're offsetting the increased cost of a faster replenishment cycle by implementing a slightly lesser, but still quite good model of device. And so the savings of going to not the top of the line device, but I would say upper mid-tier, if you will, is enough to offset the cost of that slightly faster replenishment cycle.
Okay, so just to be clear on the funding, because we're going to talk a lot about budget and everything tonight, buying or leasing, I should say, leasing these devices ahead of schedule isn't going to cost us any more than it would have cost if we did it over time.
Right.
And that money is capital money, which is in a very different segment than any salaries and benefits and all that.
Correct. I think I answered a different question than you were actually asking, but yes, that's true. The district receives about $5.5 million of unrestricted capital outlay each year. And that's the pot that this is coming from. Really, when you take a step back and think about it, because the lease payments are equally over that 4-year period, from an outflow perspective, it will actually look very, very similar to what it would look like if we were replacing a fourth of the laptops each year. Is just by entering into the lease arrangement, we're able to actually replace them all at the same time, but then still have those 4 equal payments. So the outflow will actually look almost identical to what it would have not under the lease.
Okay, and then just a curiosity question. Does this change in methodology create more or less work for our IT department?
I'll try to answer it, and then I'll let Ruben jump in if he thinks I'm misspeaking. But I would say it probably changes the work a little bit, because as opposed to rolling out a fourth of the fleet each year, you're rolling out all of it. And so you're going to have more implementation work that first year, but then you're going to have 3 years where you're not really having that same work. So it's timing it slightly differently.
Okay, and then from a teacher standpoint, because this is an Apple product, it should be a plug and play type thing, right? No training needed or anything.
Right. Yeah, they're already used to having the Apple product, and I think it will actually, by doing this, it will actually make it so it's easier to provide any training that is needed, because every teacher in the district will have the exact same device, as opposed to when you're replacing it over multiple years. As you know, technology changes quickly, and so that same model that you replaced to for year 1 may not still be available in year 4. So I actually think that this will make supporting the teachers probably dramatically easier for the IT department.
Okay, I like that answer. No further questions from me.
Mr. Mikes?
Not many. I mean, there was a lot of great questions about the payment for everything, and that's attached to it that I had questions about originally. But I know I don't know if I'd want to be on the front end of transitioning 800 units. Is that what this is? For all that, when are we expected to have this take place after approval and everything, if approved?
So I believe we would expect to have delivery this summer for rollout to staff in the fall.
Okay. And when you say the rollout for staff in the fall, is so there's a potential that on top of the transition of the laptops, and I know this is just something that they'll have to, figure out, but we're going to be talking about schools up and running at the same time, trying to get these rolled out in real time of the school year already taking place.
Which honestly is not all that dissimilar to the other method of replacing devices.
Right. Except for there's 800 of them.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Owens?
I did see some heads nodding in the audience of confirming that this is needed, so I'm glad we're doing it. I did have some questions also about the Apple versus the PC, but it sounds like everyone's using Apple now. Any way we can get don't have to pay taxes on this? No way for us?
School districts are exempt from a lot of taxes, but sales tax is not one of them, sadly.
Ms. Wallace?
I have no questions. We do keep calling it a lease though, and I did read that like at the end of the 4 years they're ours. So it's really just basically extended payments, not truly a lease, because in a lease we return the
Well,
items.
it's a lease in the sense of, technically speaking, until we make that last payment, Apple owns the devices, not the district.
And that's why they have to carry the coverage that is also added to them.
Yes, ma'am.
Understood.
I don't have any questions. I think it's great that everybody will have the same devices. My husband works in IT, and I know that he would love it if his work would say, yes, we can just do everybody's at once and everybody has the same thing. That makes it much easier on our IT staff when they have to troubleshoot things, because they're troubleshooting the same device for everybody. So that sounds great. And I'm very excited that we can make this work for you guys. Were we able to get a cheaper price because we're getting 800 versus, 400 or 200?
No, and the reason for that is when school districts spend over a certain amount of money on something, we have a couple of different options. We can either go through the RFP process that takes a couple of months, or we can utilize a cooperative contract. And really what cooperative contracts are is where someone else has already done that RFP process, but put in language that says other school districts and governments can use this contract as if it was their own. And so to allow for expediency, this has been priced through a cooperative contract that doesn't have that sort of volume pricing. If we wanted to do a procurement of our own, that process tends to take about 3 months, which would not put us in a good timeline for implementation into next school year.
Okay, sounds good. Good luck to all you guys with the 800 devices that you guys have to prepare.
I will say that I am not giving up my Windows machine. So we will we will have at least a couple of other types of devices, but
I'm right
the
there with you.
teachers.
I'm not giving up my Windows machine either, so, but you know, good on everybody that wants the Apples, so. So thank you guys. If somebody wants to make a motion then.
I'll move to approve the master lease agreement between Litchfield and Apple as presented.
I'll second.
Having a motion for Mr. Mikes and a second for Mr. Owens, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Moran,
Yay.
Mr. Mikes,
Yay.
Mr. Owens,
Yay.
Ms. Wallace.
Yay.
I'm also a yay. Motion passes. Next on the agenda, we are going to move on to supplemental resources, and this is going to be by Miss Jennifer Benjamin and probably some other people, possibly. Okay.
Possibly other people. Good evening, Madam President, members of the governing board. This evening, I came to talk about supplemental materials. Let's see if I have this correct. I do. I will be presenting this. However, questions may come up and it might be other departments that will help answer those questions. So Katie Wood, our Director of Teaching and Learning, Ruben Montoya, Director of Technology, and Laura Combs, Director of Educational Technology, may join me, as well as Dr. Doozy. The purpose of the request tonight to discuss this is to review policy and the requirements for current approval of supplemental materials. We'll discuss the concerns that Teacher Pay Teacher brought up. I apologize for the lack of communication that came out. We'll talk a little bit about that. And including from Technology Department and the Teaching and Learning Department, we'll provide some possible solutions about moving forward and discuss some next steps. This does align with the Keystones of Readiness, Resources, and Relationships. So what is supplemental material? It refers to instructional resources that are not a part of our officially adopted curriculum, but are used to support or enhance the learning that's happening in the classroom. Supplemental material is required to be approved by the school board. That is in policies IJJ and KB. Not only does this make sure that we're in alignment across the district, it also allows for parental rights so that they know exactly what's happening in the classroom. This is where the confusion and the complication came in with TPT. It's not ever been an approved supplemental curriculum. So when technology, we were sitting down at a different meeting and they said, hey, we're having some problems with this. There's some malware, there's some other things happening with our texts. Do we need this? And I said, well, it's not approved. So that was the communication breakdown. It did not roll out as well as it should have. We should have provided additional time and talking with our teachers. So I apologize that you got a lot of emails. We also got a lot of emails, but I think we've come up with a really good solution. I wanted to take a minute and talk about what is currently approved. So you do have the current approval of materials that are available for our teachers. I did hear that we've had people who have asked questions about, do we have music curriculum? Do we have art? We do. We have University of Art, which is approved, and all of our art teachers do have access to that. We also have Quaver Music for our teachers, and that also they have access. It was given at the beginning of the year. If they've had turnover in that position, which does happen from time to time, we do ask that that be the principal's responsibility to reach out to the Teaching and Learning Department to let us know so we can update that information. Discovery Education was another one that came up. Why are we not providing that anymore? It is a supplemental material that is approved, but that was actually funded by Arizona Department of Education. When they had ESSER funds, they paid for the entire state to have Discovery Ed. When the Department of Ed no longer was paying for that, we continued to allow it for supplemental. We've just never paid for that. So there are free versions of Discovery Ed, and I know that that was a question. Another one was Mystery Science, saying that that's no longer allowed. It is still allowed. It is approved on our supplemental materials list. And we used to pay for that, but when we purchased new science curriculum, we stopped paying for this to help offset the cost of our science curriculum. So I just wanted to make sure that that was out there. And if you had any questions about our current approved curriculum before I move on.
Ms. Moran, do you have any questions?
I do have a question. So another area that we received feedback on is the special education and intervention. Can you talk more about what is available to them and how you think that may or may not meet their needs?
Yes, absolutely. There are quite a few different things that are approved. If you look on the approval list, we have special education and what is available to them. They can actually use any of the core curriculum as well as the supplemental resources. And then we also have under special education, specifically News to You, there's Read 180, Systems 44, Math 180, Reading Horizons, Do the Math Now, STAR Program, Edmark, Foundations in Sound, Handwriting Without Tears, and Made for Me Literacy. Interesting enough, Made for Me Literacy was actually a TPT that you have approved because it had gone through the process many years ago. So one of the things that our solution will still be able to help support that. If a teacher has something that really they feel is valuable, our solution would be that they still might be able to use that. So we've got some possibilities. The other one that we have heard is middle school social studies, and I will agree that that is an area that we need support in. And funny that you talk about the Capital Committee because that will be going to the Capital Committee in the near future. We do know that we need to support our middle school social studies teachers in 6th, 7th, and 8th. That is not only a very difficult topic to teach in our climate, but it also is one that we have not had any supports for. There are supplemental materials that our teachers can use, Newsela or Newsela, depending on who you're talking to and how they pronounce it. We also do have social studies maps that were made many years ago and have been updated from time to time, but they are starting to be outdated and we do need to do that. So we are aware that that is an area of need. We've just rolled out curriculum every single year. So this is the time to start looking at that. And we will be bringing it to the Capital Committee to ask for funding. And then we'll also be creating a committee to work through that process.
Mr. Mikes, did you have any questions at this point?
Just really quick, did I hear you right? So the teachers pay teachers. We found some cross as far as what they offer on that we already have as a resource available to our teachers.
Many years ago, at the time, our director of special education, Melissa McComb, had found the Made for Me Literacy, which was found on TPT, and it had been approved the correct way through the governing board. It was brought to you. At the time, the board members approved it, and so that is something that we have. Mm-hmm.
Nothing more.
Mr. Owens?
We're gonna go further, right?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, nothing right now.
Okay. Ms. Wallace?
No questions right now. Thank you.
All right. Moving on then. So what was the concern with TPT? From the technology side, I talked with Ruben and he shared that there is the possibility of malware because you don't know who is uploading what. That causes a possible concern. It's not highly likely, but there are concerns still there. File uploads by sellers, typically PDFs, PowerPoints, Word docs, and zip files. TPT does not scan every file for viruses, so a bad actor could potentially upload malicious files that could cost the district funding. The other piece is it's a low risk, but it's not zero. The other thing that they're really struggling with is the files that are being downloaded, our technology doesn't necessarily like the font. And so his techs are going out constantly to try and repair and fix TPT files because of the pretty font. So it is causing a lot more manpower because of that. Is that correct, Ruben? Okay. As far as the curriculum side, TPT is currently not an approved supplemental curriculum, which is why it had never been brought to the governing board to let you know about the communication. So I apologize. It had just not been on the curriculum piece before. There can be a lack of alignment with TPT. So sellers are able to pretty much put whatever they want. It could be standards-based. It might be very loosey-goosey standards-based. So that can be very difficult. The quality and accuracy, we have Arizona state standards, and these aren't always Arizona state standards. And they also can be at very different rigor levels. When you look at most of TPT, not all, but most of TPT is at the lowest level of retail. There also can be some data privacy concerns. TPT can ask you to go to external platforms. And if they're asking for student information and we have not vetted that, then we are allowing lots of information for our students out there, which should not be happening. And then there's just the instructional coherence or that secret sauce. So if one school is using something, we should be allowed to make sure that all schools have that information to be able to support that. So what could the solution be? This is not just a TPT issue. This is a supplemental material issue because we do know that there are supplemental materials being utilized across the district that we might not even be aware of. So this is TPT just kind of open the can of worms. And then we're like, wow, what are other districts doing? So we were able to talk with a couple of different districts from out of state actually, and they had some really great solutions that actually mimic some of what we already do with some of our curriculum. They had committees, and we do have committees that are set aside if a parent had a concern about a textbook or about a literature book. We have committees already formed in our policy that say that it would go through a committee to determine if this is appropriate or not. So we're recommending the exact same thing to be done for supplemental material. However, this committee would need to meet a lot more often, and our teachers would need to be prepared. So I was talking with a teacher today at Corte Sierra, and she said, and she is a special education teacher, and she said, there's some really great things that work for our IEP goals. And I said, yep. And hopefully they're bundled so that you're not sending one at a time, but maybe it's a big bundle you're sending to the committee so that we can review that. And then we would whitelist it and approve that. This committee would be composed of district guiding coalition. We would also want teachers on it. We would want to maybe a K-5 or a 6-8, or maybe this is K-2, 3, 5, 6, 8. We're still vetting this process. This is only the second time we've kind of shared it out. We shared it with our leaders earlier last week. We want to make sure that the material is aligned with the standards and the district goals. We also need to make sure that we're following legal and ethical compliance and making sure that we're following FERPA. And technology and accessibility checks. Is this really, is this going to do anything with our technology? Is this safe for us to have on this? Can our digital tools access what they're asking for? And then that transparency for parents and making sure that the board is aware as well. So that piece is really important because it is a part of the IJJ policy. So what would approval look like? And again, this is not just TPT. This would be for any supplemental material. We thought that this could be a multi-layer. So we look at some material and we're like, wow, this is amazing. This would be wonderful. Yes, this is approved and supported by the teaching and learning department. This is approved by technology. We will support training. We will make sure that everybody has access to this. It will be for everybody. Or it could be, yes, this is approved by district. We will make sure that it is on the supplemental material list, but that is without district support, meaning we're not going to provide professional development with it. Technology is not going to help if there's a crash. This is just, you are welcome to use it, but there's not resources going into it. And the third one would be, no, it's not approved. And that's likely going to be because it either does not meet that standard criteria, it does not meet the safety or the protocols that technology needs to adhere to. It goes against policy somehow, some way. If there are several things in policy about what can and can't be in the classroom. So it could be something like that as well. So we have the yes approved with support, yes approved without support, and no not approved. So again, I shared that this is really still being vetted out with this committee work. So we need to develop this committee. We would like to pilot it in Q4 to see what we need to do to make this happen. We are hoping that teachers will send us information once we get that out, that they will submit, maybe if they know that every year I use this piece, or this is really important curriculum to me, I'd like this to be approved right away. We know that this will be a big lift initially. We're hoping that it will die out as we've initially gotten that big lift done. There will be a review process with implementation so that we can actually have this starting next year full-fledged after our pilot during Q4. We need to make sure that we are communicating out this plan to all of our teachers and how that's going to roll out, the responsibilities on our committee and who's going to be helping to facilitate and to also communicate what's been approved or not approved. We'd also like to keep a list of what's not approved so we don't have to keep going back over and over and getting the same material that maybe we've already said no to. Approval timelines. How long does this take? We are anticipating that these meetings would be every other month. So is that immediately after the meeting? Is it during the meeting that the teacher's notified? So making sure we have that timeline. And then we'd like to pilot the metrics. How many people are submitting to request additional supplemental materials? And what does that look like? So our recommendation right now to solve some of the issues and concerns that you've heard as well as what we've heard is to approve TPT for the remainder of the year. And during that time, we're asking that teachers do get the materials that they want and that they would submit it to us so that we could go through this process. And that TPT would be shut down for next year and we would whitelist the things that are approved and on our supplemental list. So that way we are following all of the rules and the requirements and hopefully finding a happy medium for everybody. I do want to point out that TPT does offer some very valuable resources. It can make a beautiful classroom, like a lot of the things that when we're walking through classrooms, the bulletin boards and things like that, those are TPT. We also know there's some great behavior skill things and social stories and things like that come out of TPT and are fabulous. And there are some good academics, but it's few and far between. Research has shown that the academic portion, only about 10% of what's on TPT is actually at the standard and the rigor level. So that is an area of concern for us. And that is one of the reasons that we'd like to take this approach. And I will stand for any additional questions that you have.
Ms. Moran, did you have any questions?
Yes. So you just mentioned a couple of things that teachers utilize from TPT, which in my world, TPT is transaction privilege tax. So every time I hear someone say it, I think very differently. But in this context, I know what it is. You mentioned like the bulletin boards and things like that. I have never worked in a classroom. So can you tell me what some of the things are, some of the resources are? What would that look like? Because in my mind, I'm thinking like worksheets, but I have no idea if that's actually what we're talking about.
So it could be the birthday board. It could be the get to know you activities. They have the cute little printouts where the kid can draw their picture. Sometimes it's goal settings. When you're walking through a classroom and you're looking on the bulletin boards, a lot of times that's the TPT stuff that they have up there that they've found somebody else has created. So they didn't have to create it. And we understand that is time consuming. But they also, TPT requires you to spend your own money as well. And so our teachers are spending their own money on these items as well.
So is that curriculum, having a birthday board?
It's not.
Okay, so
We
I
just,
guess,
we can't have it all open or all closed. So we're trying to find a happy medium where it wouldn't have to come through the curriculum. We would have to have them submit so we could whitelist it. Does that make sense?
no. So if I'm a teacher and I'm at home and I find some printables, that's what I'm gonna call it.
You would be
clip
allowed
art,
to.
I could do that, print it
Yes.
at home or whatever.
Yes.
It's just the downloading it onto our system is the
Correct.
problem.
They, right now, it is closed, so they don't have access while they're at our schools. Do they have it on their computer if they're at home?
It shouldn't be on the device at all, obviously. Yes,
Okay.
yeah, or it could get on the device.
So
So
they could do it from their home computer and however they want to do that. Yes, that is still allowed for almost anything.
okay, so the things that we're trying to manage are the curriculum academic pieces.
Correct.
And those would be the only things allowed if they're approved or through that matrix that you talked about, like, approval without district support. So all of the decorative and everything is teachers are on their own regardless with that, is what you're telling me?
No, we could, we would need to talk about it. I don't know what that would look like from the technology standpoint. I'm envisioning that they could send it so that they would have a link. However, that could get very tedious for this team. And I don't know if that would impact Ruben's team with the fonts and things like that. So
Okay.
we would need to work through
Okay,
that.
because
piece
it
of
sounds like that's a separate issue
It
from
is.
this issue. But it
Yes.
sounds like that is potentially an issue, especially as we go
It
into the
is.
fall where you have new classrooms set up and all that. sort of thing.
Correct. It is an
Okay.
issue.
Okay. My next question is kind of around that, like, where do we draw the line, even from a curriculum standpoint? So let's say I'm a teacher, I see a clip on TikTok that shows me how to teach a math concept, and I didn't have to buy anything, didn't have to download anything, but I decided to use that in my classroom. Where's my agency with being able to do that
You-
versus getting it from, it's just the download part is what we're saying we don't
Correct.
want.
You still have the right to do that. That is the art of teaching. We are not trying to say to not be able to do that. If you wanted to make a quiz and you just wanted to do a quick thing real quick and make some copies to make that happen, or you're putting it in your Google Classroom, all of those are absolutely acceptable. The TPT creates challenges because of the technology piece, as well as if you're just going off of what TPT is showing you and saying that that's the standard, it might not be.
Okay, so you're really saying we want to be able to monitor the rigor and approve as much as we can and vet for any IT issues before teachers can use some of those resources. That's really the goal here.
Yes, yes. Do you want to add to it?
I'm just
Yes.
trying to get to the crux of
No,
it.
you're-
Like, I know there's a lot of things that teachers are using this for, so I want to
Yes.
get to the crux of what is our part in that and what are we trying to do? Other than, of course, we want to avoid malware and viruses and all of that sort of thing.
Mr. Mikes, go ahead.
And I just wanted to go off that because I'm trying to figure out if we're talking about, I don't feel like we're talking about curriculum right now or any sort of,
Well,
I
unfortunately,
feel like I
PPT
feel
is
like I'm,
all things. So that's been the issue, is that if we just said no to the curriculum, but we're keeping everything else open, that still causes an issue for Ruben's team. So TPT has lots of things on it. Teachers.
Can
can go
I
down.
jump in? Because this is,
Yes.
it's just, sorry. Because you said it again, this causes a problem for Ruben's team. So Ruben, can you tell me how many times your team has had to deal with some bad file that's been downloaded or malware or whatever, any of those things that, not the font's wrong, sorry, not that the font is wrong, but like the other actual security risks?
Sure, Madam President. To your comment on malware, I'm going to say 0 this time because we have things in place that are catching them. So the team we get notified if a computer has malware. I can't tell exactly where it came from, but we've probably been out maybe just in general 20 times throughout the district to just check a computer that has malware. But it could be from anything. So they do come in with malware.
Okay, so you can't pinpoint that to TPT though.
I could start looking, if we turn it back on, I could start looking more at that. I just see it as malware. It's something important. Let's go isolate it and let's go get that computer cleaned off as quickly as we can. That's been my approach so far. But to your point, I probably can in the future start pinpointing it.
Okay, because all of this, I mean, sorry, I'm jumping in front of everybody in the line, but the thing is that we say a lot that we want to allow the teachers to perform the art of teaching, and we want to make sure everybody's following the science. And to me, this is an art form for a lot of teachers. It's not the science curriculum side. And I know we have some people that are using it for that. But to me, it feels like we should handle those people individually, and we shouldn't cut off this resource for teachers. I know that many of our elementary school teachers use TPT to do their room transformations and all of that fun stuff. And we're going to make it so much more difficult for them to provide those fun opportunities for our kids because of some teachers that are making bad choices. And that seems to me like maybe those individual teachers need to be handled rather than punish everyone collectively.
So teacher pay teachers actually poses a very unique, I guess, circumstance. Because a lot of supplemental materials, you're looking at a website or you're looking at an app or an extension and you're looking at the functionality of that. And once you open it up, it's opened up. or once you close it down, it's closed down. Teacher Pay Teachers is very unique because there's such a vast amount of different resources for teachers, from behavior to classroom environment to actually curriculum. So we have things that are being used that are replacing the curriculum. And so it is not currently an approved supplemental material. So what we would like to just have the opportunity to have a committee review each of these supplemental materials, including Teacher Pay Teachers, to determine the best approach. I know we don't have maybe all the nitty gritty answers of exactly how we're going to handle it because we haven't gotten the committee together yet to say, okay, how are we going to tackle this? I do admit piecemealing Teacher Pay Teachers seems like to me it would be an absorbent amount of time, and would it really be the time that we want to dedicate to really get to the goal that we want? I think really the committee needs to sit down and look at that. What we do know for a fact right now is that our teachers are using a supplement at a great number, not just a few. We see it quite frequently, and we know it's not approved right now. So we want to be able to bring our recommendation to you as far as what we approve for supplemental materials with a very strategic process. We don't want to just hand pick things because people say it's great or they really, really want it. We want to make sure we vet each supplemental material in the same strategic way. So that's why we're proposing this committee, because really Teacher Pay Teachers is just a drop. I mean, there are so many supplemental materials out there. When we go to conferences and we meet with different vendors that, you know, are selling products, they're like, oh, do you want a list of teachers that are already using our product? And I'm like, really? So really making sure that we vet these, because it's just blowing up since COVID. We have so many digital resources and nothing's really free. And so we need to make sure, and I know Teacher Pay Teachers, there are free components to it as well as paid components. We just need to make sure that we have a great way to vet these things, because, you know, we're all trusted by the parents that we're ensuring the curriculum that our teachers are using is the appropriate curriculum and is going to, you know, meet the needs of the state standards. So we just want the opportunity to do that for you and then bring our recommendation as far as what we believe should be approved or not approved.
I understand what you're saying, and I agree that our teachers shouldn't be using unapproved curriculum, but a vast majority of our teachers that use Teacher Pay Teacher do not use it as a curriculum thing. So therefore, I don't feel like it's fair to make it that they have no access to that. Or we're saying it's fine if they do it on their own and it's their own devices at their house. Well, they shouldn't have to use their own devices at home to print stuff to make a bulletin board. That doesn't seem fair.
And I would not endorse that either. I would not say, do whatever you want at home and bring it into school. That's not it, but it's a delicate balance between what teachers that are paid to create instructional materials for us can do, right? And that art of teaching, and paying for an activity and not really vetting it to make sure that, and I understand they might not be using it as full out curriculum, but they're using it as a supplemental resource for instruction. And so we just need to make sure that we vet it. And like I said, Teacher Pay Teachers poses a very unique, I don't think any other supplemental material is going to be as hairy as Teacher Pay Teacher, because you're not talking about one product that is designed in the same way with the same protocols, the same processes, because they don't really use a process like that either. So a lot of the places that you can get supplementary materials from, they have a vetting system, and Teacher Pay Teachers just doesn't have that. So, but maybe if anyone's listening that works for Teacher Pay Teachers, maybe that's something they can create, because that would really be helpful, I think, to many schools, because it's not a uncommon thing for teachers to use this product.
Mr. Mikes, did you have questions?
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to put this, and you know what, actually, let's, Kim or Miss Marie, okay.
No, I just, so two more things on that. So the thing that I definitely agree with is, number one, we have paid for curriculum that has been fully vetted, and we want our teachers to use that. We don't want them to spend their own money on buying supplemental materials, because if that is truly needed in the classroom, then we aren't doing our job to give them the resources that they need. So I would like to make sure that we are doing our job. And that obviously is going to include various sources of supplemental materials. So I think you're on the right path with getting this problem solved. I think the non-curriculum part of TPT would be solved if we had a process of something IT related before a download happens or something like that. I don't have an answer for that, but again, I agree with President Zaidama that it shouldn't be well, you're on your own with printing stuff at home because you can't get to that site from our resources. So I don't have the answers to that really, but I do understand the vetting process. But I do also think there's so much gray area that it's going to be really challenging to get to a solution because there's the curriculum and then there's all the nuance. And so I think that's going to be really hard.
Mr. Mikes.
Okay, so we have a resource to hang on our walls or, for track, just that art piece with that use the visual stuff that you see in a classroom. And that's a download issue. Anytime you're downloading stuff, I know we have to be protective as far as what is being downloaded and what's accessible. So I totally understand that as, where that can get. But then the other pathway is then when I asked you, I don't know if we're talking about curriculum or not. Obviously, that's not curriculum or supplemental curriculum. Then there's other components of this that are supplemental curriculum.
Correct.
That are being used as a driving piece within lessons that, because it's accessible, it's being used as that driving factor when it doesn't. Well, from the percentage that you said, that other big concern is the alignment piece, which is obviously not a great thing that we can have. So it's like, if we could figure out a way where we don't have a malware or viruses or anything like that issue for, doing the printable stuff.
Yeah.
But that obviously, I know you're trying to, with the committee, you're trying to figure out that supplemental curriculum side as well. And so I just wanted to make sure I understood. So that's the two avenues
Correct.
that we're talking about right now. And when we're talking about the recommendation, we're saying without district, you're asking us to approve right now without any district support for that. And no district support means what? They have to do it at home, or district support means if there's an issue with downloading something or you're doing a printable or with
Correct.
the fonts, we're not going to come help.
We
fix
would
it right now
open
because we
it
don't
back
have
up and we would not send a tech if there was an issue with downloading or fonts.
But with keeping in mind that with the curriculum side of it, we know we have to have a process for that. If we're going to say we're using it in our classrooms.
Yes.
And for transparency to parents as well.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Owens.
Yes, I'm going to apologize to our teachers because I know that this has been frustrating having this removed from them, but I personally love that it happened. I think that this is going to do the things that should have already been done, right? There shouldn't be any supplemental curriculum material in our classrooms unless it's been approved, unless it's been vetted. And that shouldn't be on the teachers. That should be on us as a district. So it's not on the teachers who are doing it. If we have gaps in our curriculum, then hopefully this committee can identify those and we can fulfill them from the top down. So individual teachers are doing their best. I understand that, but in full transparency, one of the reasons I ran for this board and I serve on this board is to ensure that the curriculum that is taught in our classrooms is vetted. And that's on both ends. Nobody should be pushing agendas or narratives. And that happens when you introduce supplemental information and curriculum. And that's both from an educational standpoint, a behavioral standpoint, and everything in between. And so unfortunately, TPT was the straw that broke the camel's back or opened Pandora's box. And it sounds like we have a plan moving forward, which I'm looking forward to. But supplemental information, supplemental curriculum should not be used if it has not been approved. And so we as a district, we as a board, we as a administration need to make sure that any gaps in our curriculum that need to be filled by supplemental materials are identified, and we provide that to our teachers. As far as the other stuff, the malware, I'm not as worried about that. Like we can figure that out. But I'm glad this happened. Hopefully we can create a quick solution to it. The teachers can get what they need you go in these classrooms and they're amazing, right? Like when we tore these canvases, it's so cool. I don't remember all this stuff on my boards when I was in grade school. Some of these classes, you can't even see the walls. And it's really, really cool. And I think it makes our kids feel happy and special. And I understand when I envision TPT, it's like just this huge chat room of teachers and sharing information. And that's amazing. But we cannot allow teachers to just pull stuff that isn't vetted and think that it is meets our curriculum standards, but B is sufficient for our district. So I'm glad it happened. I'm glad we have a solution moving forward, and I'm looking forward to what the committee finds as far as gaps in our curriculum and what supplemental information we can push out from a district standpoint and not individual teachers needing to find it on their own.
Ms. Wallace?
Thank you. I've been patiently waiting my turn. I disagree with that. I taught kindergarten and first grade, and I followed my curriculum and taught my curriculum 100%. But I also, every Thanksgiving, bought curriculum on TPT and did a little Thanksgiving unit that was not in my curriculum. I also, every Christmas, bought holiday information about the different holidays and taught that information. I bought things for bulletin boards. I bought things for my behavior chart. And I chose to purchase those things on my own. And that did not change the authenticity of the curriculum. That did not change me fulfilling my commitment to teaching the curriculum, but it enhanced that and it gave a creative outlet that I didn't have to create. And in my own personal job today, it's interesting that this fell right when it fell. The Friday before TPT was taken away from you guys, or the day it was taken away from you guys, Canva was taken away from me at work. And I have been using Canva for 4 years. I logged in and it said banned website. I have fought for 5 weeks to get Canva added back. And my argument to them is the same argument I would have for these teachers. Yes, I can do these things on PowerPoint and on Publisher and all of those things, but it's uglier and it's slower and it takes me longer to do my job. And I can do my job faster and it looks better if I can have Canva back. And after all of that time, they finally gave me Canva back. And it's the same argument. Yes, you can do it without it. Absolutely, you can do it without it. But it might be slower, it might be uglier, and it might not create the same experience. Do I think we should not use our curriculum? Absolutely not. We have amazing curriculum. But I don't think having access to those things is going to change the use of our curriculum. And if teachers, like Melissa said, are not using the curriculum that was given to them, that's an individual basis. That isn't someone that's creating a beautiful bulletin board or doing a fun little one-day unit for Thanksgiving. Those are completely different situations. And there isn't a way, like Ms. Benjamin said, to easily have some of those pieces and not others. And that's a problem. We can't just take away all of it because there's a few issues. I 100% agree with you. They need to be using the curriculum, but this isn't about curriculum for this site specifically. Do we need to be vetting what people are doing? Yes. We also need to be providing a social studies curriculum, which I understand we're going to be getting into, but those teachers have been doing what they can. And there are some amazing things on here for social studies. So for this specifically, I feel for the teachers. I literally have been going through the exact same thing with Canva. Yes, I could do my job. I will honestly tell you 5 different times I drove home in the middle of the day, made something on Canva and emailed it to myself and drove back to work. Our teachers can't do that with a classroom full of teachers or a classroom full of children. But I've did that 5 times because it literally saved me time to do that than try to create it on an old outdated system like Publisher. So
Real quick, sorry. Are you done?
yes.
I know you, I mean, just because you said I disagree, I don't think I said anything that's different than what you said in that, like, if
I
you-
mean, you said you want the site shut down. I don't.
No,
think
I
it
didn't.
should be
I didn't. Did
shut
I,
down.
I said I love that it happened because now we're having this conversation.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
We have a remedy. TPT's coming back based on this recommendation. I love that. So that's where I'm saying, you know, all those materials, I love that. So if we can find a way to do that, yes. But as far as curriculum, if you want to do a Halloween curriculum or something, then that goes to the committee, right? So I don't want it shut down. I want access to it. I'm just saying I'm glad this happened because we're having this conversation.
Well, what I heard you say, Board Member Owens, was that teachers are introducing inappropriate materials through their supplemental materials.
I didn't say inappropriate. I said there's teachers that can use supplemental information in curriculum to push personal agendas. And that's both ways. I'm not.
Do you have evidence that any of our teachers are doing that?
I don't have any. No, I'm saying it happens. And I'm saying this allows it to not happen. I don't have information. I don't have.
Supplemental materials does not equal indoctrination.
It can. And so I'm saying this helps not do that. It can. I don't have any evidence, but at the same time, it's pretty easy to you're trying to put words in my mouth and push a narrative that was not even mentioned.
Okay, I just have a completely different question. Has Etsy been shut down?
I do not know that answer.
Because I mean, Etsy provides very similar content.
I've never used it for curriculum. I've only bought arts and crafts things off of it that have gone to my house.
The good news is Canva is still open.
Good, I can come
Canva
work
is
there.
open.
Okay. So, obviously we all have some pretty strong opinions about this. For me, I'm glad that we're going to talk about approving it now. I actually agree with Mr. Owens in that I'm glad that this is making us have this conversation because I think that's important for us to have. Mostly because I think it's important to differentiate between curriculum and the art and fun of the classrooms. And I want to make sure that we don't take that away from them. I agree that our teachers need to use our curriculum and the things that we approve for them to use. 100%, I'm in support of that. So like I said, I'm glad we're doing this right now, but I do think this is going to be a continuous conversation because I don't necessarily want to just have this not allowed for next year. So I guess we'll have to talk about it again.
Okay. Would you like to approve it as written or would you prefer to amend the recommendation?
Madam President,
Yes.
before we answer that question, because ultimately we are asking the board for a particular vote tonight, just kind of listening and thinking about the conversation that we've had and the comments we've received. I think it's really important that those that are listening out in the world or who are here tonight regarding curriculum it is our desire to have a guaranteed and viable curriculum, that our kids in our schools are getting quality resources to push them to that next level. The whole concept of that Litchfield learner, right? Creating our 8th graders to get ready for high school and beyond. I think it's exciting that we are having this conversation, that we are creating a process to review supplemental materials. I also just want to highlight the importance of the voice of our educator, because as we're hearing from Ms. Wallace as an example, as a former educator, there are some things out there that we don't know about and that are making a positive difference in their lives. So we need to hear from our staff on that. I just feel like this conversation is really important, but it's important for us. I also want to go back to what Mr. Owen said about making certain that we're working with our curriculum team, because if we do have gaps, AKA social studies, we need to address that. And so that's that whole idea of I believe who this team is here about continual improvement and looking for areas to keep making us the best elementary district in the West Valley. This is part of it. And so I just think there's a lot to this conversation. It's not done, but certainly it is upon us to own this and to really support our educators. Thank you.
I agree. And again, for the curriculum thing, that's why I'm happy, because we did become aware that maybe there are some gaps as a board that we didn't realize ourselves that existed. So again, this is why I agree with Mr. Owens about how I'm glad that this has brought some stuff to light for us and that we're able to address it. I don't know. I guess we'll see how they make a motion, but my hope would be that we would approve teacher pay teacher for the rest of this year. But the question about for next year, does that mean that whole list is going to go through your committee that we've already, like the list we have approved of supplemental materials? None of those will be approved for next year until your committee goes through them, and we'll have to approve a new list.
The ones that are already approved, we would keep on the list. It would be anything additional that maybe teachers are using currently, that they could submit, was what our thought had been.
Would it be possible to approve the first sentence of this, which is related to this school year, and then get an update based on what happens between now and the end of the school year before we make a decision on 25, 26?
Yes, you could absolutely do that.
That's what I would like to see happen.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I was concerned about the second part of it because I'm hearing the committee aspect of it, and I'm trying to figure out how we can juggle that with fidelity, as all that information's come, not to chop something off that we, then we're going to get into an unintentional thing again, where we're denying access for some things that really do pay off. So that was my concern with it.
And I just, again, want to make sure that we are establishing what is curriculum versus what is just the fun art of teaching in the classroom, because I feel like that's where the teachers pay teachers thing is becoming this big discussion up here and with people in the community, is that I don't think any of us are saying that we think teachers should go and do whatever curriculum they want. I think that we want them to be able to make learning as fun and engaging as possible for their students, given what we are providing them. But if they can use teachers pay teachers to add some fun into their classroom, make it more special for those kids, then I think that's what we all want. So that was all. If somebody wants to make a motion, unless anybody else has any questions or comments.
No, I will move to approve the request that for the remainder of the 24-25 school year, teachers pay teachers be approved as a supplemental curriculum resource without district support.
I second.
Having a motion from Ms. Moran and a second from Ms. Wallace, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Moran,
Yay.
Mr. Mikes,
Yay.
Mr. Owens,
Yay.
Ms. Wallace,
Yay.
I'm a yay, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now we're going to move on to some discussion items. We're going to start with the fiscal year 25-26 budget discussion with CFO Vaughn, because it's the CFO Vaughn show for a while we have this budget discussion over the next several meetings.
Madam President, may I make a personal request to take a small break?
Yes, let's do that.
Thank you.
I think that's right. Because there is, it's a whole smorgasbord. Yeah. That teachers, right? So it's just an interesting, so dynamic, right? Yeah, we need to. I just. Yeah, you found it. I appreciate that too. Yeah. Yeah.
Paging Michelle Wallace.
People in trouble. Not I. Not I. Oh, really? Yeah. I'll take it. What is it saying?
Are we all ready to get back into this, to talk budgets for next school year?
I am.
Awesome. Well, if we are ready to get started, we will turn this over to our CFO Vaughn to have this discussion started.
All right. Madam President, members of the governing board, Superintendent Davidson, colleagues and community, thank you for joining us tonight to continue to discussing the items we've been exploring related to the budget for the 2025-2026 school year. Tonight's presentation aligns with the district's strategic keystones of readiness, relationship, and resources. It really crosses all three. We will start tonight's presentation with a review of our food service operations and some changes we're recommending for next year. We'll then discuss proposed facility rental fees for next year before continuing discussions of M&O budget initiatives. This slide shows 9 years of financial results of the district's food service operations. In the second to last column, you can see the profit or loss generated by the program. The program operated at a profit for only 2 of the 9 years, with the most recent being fiscal year 2021-2022. This was driven almost entirely by changes in the program at the federal level during the pandemic. You'll also likely notice an improvement in the financial results last year. This improvement was due to changes in rules around the indirect cost that can be charged to the program and not tied to program operations. This data shows us that improving the efficiency of our food service program has been a need for some time. Tonight, we'll walk you through some of the steps already taken, as well as proposed steps for next year. Based on its impact on the financial results of the food service program, it's important to understand the concept of indirect cost. Indirect cost is an expense that the district can charge to the food service program and other federal programs for items not easily accounted for directly in the program. Good examples of these items are utilities or services of our departments, such as finance, human resources, and information technology. The federal government recognizes that it would be administratively burdensome to determine the cost of services rendered to our food service department by these centralized services, and so instead allows districts to take a percentage of certain costs within the program as indirect costs. Indirect cost then becomes an unrestricted funding source for the district that we use to support salary and benefits of many of these shared services. Given the figures we've already looked at for the food service program, a reasonable question would be, what should we be targeting for the financial results of the program? This slide will help us gain a little more insight into that question. It's important to remember that our food service program truly is running a chain of 16 restaurants and spearheading catering opportunities within our district. With the running of these separate operations come capital needs, such as ovens, walk-in freezers and refrigerators, etc. This slide shows the state of the food service department's capital. A vast majority of their capital equipment is beyond its expected useful life, with an initial purchase price of these items many years ago at $3.1 million. A successfully operating food service program should be able to support indirect costs as well as the program's own capital replenishment cycle without needing to rely on the district's other capital resources meant to support other district programs such as curriculum and technology. Presently, all food service capital needs are covered by district capital funds. We began taking steps to address food service operations very soon after Dr. Davidson joined Litchfield through the district's current organizational chart by bringing all of the operational departments and those who are intended to financially support themselves under the oversight of the Executive Director of Operations, Dr. Stone, and me. Prior to this reorganization, food service was overseen by a cabinet member who also oversaw curriculum and many student-focused initiatives, which took a majority of their time. We also brought in a new food service leader who has provided a new perspective on the operations of the program. We have also minimized our summer feed opportunities to those that are most needed and utilized within our district, and raised our prices for those not eligible for free or reduced priced meals, allowing us to increase average revenue per meal. Our next steps are to finalize setting meal cost targets, implementing a restructure of the department, which we will talk about momentarily, continue updating pricing, and redesign the program's menu to ensure that we not only continue to serve nutritious meals, but also ones that our students want to eat and that financially support the program. This slide details the expected impact of the proposed reorganization of the food service department. It includes the collapse of 5 central office food service positions and the creation of 2 new positions for an estimated savings of almost $156,000 per year. This reorganization is designed to bring efficiencies to operations and improve practices such as streamlined cash collections procedures and ensuring all positions are fully utilized. Our other proposed change for next year includes an adjustment to prices. However, before covering that proposal, it's important to see the impact of the price adjustments we've already made. This slide shows lunches served in each of the listed fiscal years through January, as well as student count figures. You can see that even as we've increased prices, meals served, and more importantly, meals served per student enrolled, have stayed stable with a slight upward trend. This slide also shows the price targets set by the USDA for the National School Lunch Program. These targets are adjusted each year for various factors, but are set to ensure that the revenue a school lunch program receives from a paid meal is the same as it receives from a free or reduced priced meal, considering the amounts paid by families and the amounts paid by the USDA to support the program. You can see we remain well below this target, and as a result, the program receives substantially fewer resources per meal served to families in paid status versus those in reduced or free status. This has a significant impact on the district due to the breakdown of the number of meals served in each category. Through January of this year, 43% of meals served are paid meals. Based on this data, we are proposing a 25-cent increase for prices in our food service program next year. As a reminder, this will not impact families qualifying for free or reduced price meals. The proposed increase would keep the district well below the targets set by the USDA, but would greatly assist in our ability to make the new cost per meal targets possible, ultimately helping maintain the quality of the meals we serve. At this time, the team and I are available to answer any questions you might have on our proposed changes in food service.
Ms. Moran, any questions?
I do have a question just to enhance my own understanding of this funding. So you mentioned that we will need to have capital funds available to replace equipment at some point in time. And that currently we use general district capital funds that could be used in the classroom, or campuses other than outside, food service. Is the goal that if we get to a, let's say, break even on our food service, that our existing fund balance would go to fund the capital that we might need, so we wouldn't need to use district capital? Or tell me, because I'm gonna look at that fund balance, I'm like, oh, $3 million, okay, that's not nothing.
Not nothing. What you'll, I shouldn't say what you'll find interesting. What I found interesting um, is if you look at how that fund balance was trending, in 2016, we ended the year with $4 million. The only reason we have much fund balance at all is that $2.2 million we made the 1 year during the pandemic. This is probably the one instance where the pandemic was quite helpful, right? Probably the only instance I can think of. Because otherwise that fund balance would be about $1 million. And when you're running a program with $5 million of expenses each year, and you're truly relying on revenue that's coming in from selling it, I mean, you essentially have all the same risks as a restaurant. So you do want some level of fund balance. If we were having a fully successfully running food service program, we would be breaking even to a slight profit even after they had paid for a recurring capital replenishment cycle. There is a matching requirement under USDA, and so the support that comes from either our M&O fund or capital fund cannot go to zero. But how that works in a lot of other districts is expenses are identified that do directly support the food service program, and are accounted for differently to show that support to meet that matching requirement versus truly providing that funding for additional spending. And if we can get to that point, then we could see more capital resources available for other projects like a 6-8 social studies curriculum, or replenishing staff devices.
And I think to piggyback off that, for clarity, the food service ending fund balance has to be used on food service. We cannot
Correct.
move that out versus the capital. We can spend on whatever capital things we want. So we have more flexibility with money flowing out of capital, less flexibility on taking anything out of food service.
I would go a little bit further in that and say we have no flexibility. The
Yeah.
funding is restricted
Okay.
to food service.
So how many years do you think it will take before we get to a break even or slightly profitable to cover replacement costs on food service?
Well, if you look at how we ended last year at the program losing $175,000, and you look at the proposed savings of the reorganization, that's covering a majority of it. So I think we could get to break even, not considering capital, within the next year or two. I do think it may require some of that work that I talked about around redesigning the menu to bring it fully to fruition. But I do think simply the price adjustment and this reorganization could do a vast majority of the work to at least break even. I think all of the steps may be needed to get to where they can also fully support their capital replenishment cycle.
The last thing that I will say about this segment is that to me, the price increase seems reasonable. Anyone that's buying food these days know that things have gotten more expensive. And again, we're not in this for profit, but we do need to be able to sustain the program. So no further questions from me.
Mr. Mikes?
I was looking at slide 12, when I was looking at the numbers, what I was trying to figure out is there a percentage of kids that we have an idea as far as what actually as far as using our services? Am I reading this right? So I see estimated student count of, 10,403 kids based off of the lunches served, but is there a do we have a percentage district wide as far as what kids actually are typically eating in our cafeteria?
We do. It's not a percentage I know off the top of my head. So if you don't mind, I'd love to provide that in a Friday update.
Yeah, and I was just, the curiosity is just the usability as far as that's concerned, with kids bringing their lunch versus the
Right.
availability.
Because to your point, I mean, there's not going to be an instance where 100% of kids
Sure.
eat 100% of the days. But as we look at that redesign of the menu, the goal really is to ensure that we're serving meals that kids want to eat. Obviously, we have nutritional requirements that we have to follow, that are put on us by the program, but there's still things that we can do to make sure that the meals we're serving are intriguing, and that there's enough various options so that even though they may not be interested in one of the options we're serving that day, they might be interested in another. And so I know our food service team is looking at how to redesign those meals in that way, and that may involve taste testing opportunities where we really engage with students to get their feedback on new menu items, those sorts of activities. That will take some time, which is why I'm not telling you that we'll necessarily have a completely redesigned menu for next year along with these changes. But I do think that that's the longer term vision of the team.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Owens?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. Totally understand the need and the reason behind the price increase. Anytime we talk about increasing costs to the students, whether it be for activities, but especially for lunches, I always want to reiterate to our communities and our family members that if you need assistance with free and reduced, apply, right? These increases will not impact you whatsoever. So I know as an administration, when we roll these out, we're going to reinforce that and make sure that any child who's eligible can make sure that they get that. And so this doesn't burden them in any way. On a personal note, I do want to just give a kudos out to food services department. My kindergartner, we used to ask her, we go over the menu every week. Okay, do you want to take your lunch this day, this day, this day? And now we don't even ask her. She just buys the school lunch every day and loves it.
Ms. Wallace?
My only question is, when I look at the increase slide on slide 13, it's showing a 25-cent increase across the board. I feel like it would make more sense to have a percentage increase, because our lunches are going up 25 cents, our breakfasts are going up 25 cents, and our individual milks are going up 25 cents. It doesn't seem very well balanced. Like if we increased everything by 10%, our lunches would be $3.95. They'd be, or that's the second lunch, I'm sorry, $3.45. But our milks would be
If that's something
75 cents.
If that's something the board is interested in, what I can do is calculate what the percent increase would be to where we want to be for lunch, and then apply that percent to the other items. The other items are very infrequently purchased, honestly, but that would be a reasonable approach to modify the proposal.
Yeah, I mean, I just think as a parent, if my kid is only buying milk, that is a big increase as opposed to lunch.
Sure.
Ms. Moran?
I already asked my questions.
No, sorry, well, I'm losing my mind. I actually would like to get those numbers possibly if we looked at a percentage thing to get our lunches where we want them to be, because I do agree that's a lot if somebody just wants to get a milk. But otherwise, I also agree with Mr. Owens. My daughter loves buying lunch now, and none of my other kids ever wanted to buy lunch ever. But the little one, oh yeah, all the time. She's like, "Do I have to take a lunch today, Mom? I want to buy school lunch." I'm like, "Okay." So, yeah, if we can just get those numbers in the future to see that as an option.
Am I okay to move on? Okay.
Yep, we are good to move on.
Now we will spend some time talking about facility rentals before transitioning to maintenance and operation budget considerations. You may recall that the district recalibrated its fee structure for facility rentals for the current year. This allowed us to feel comfortable adding a second grounds crew to help maintain fields in better condition and to add 2 facilities positions entirely focused on facility rental groups. Due to the hiring process, these positions were not in place for all of this year. However, as we continue to look at the operations of this program, we have some proposed fee changes for next year. We are proposing a small inflation adjustment on hourly rental rates with the exception of rental of classroom space and fields. We would recommend holding classroom rental rates at the same price as this year, and we would recommend increasing field rental rates by $5 per hour. These recommendations are the results of an analysis of the cost to maintain these spaces after facility rentals. This slide shows the results of that proposal as well as the increase from the current rate. All bolded figures are unchanged. My next slide is a question slide, but given the content of the material, I'm just going to stay here to address any questions you might have.
Ms. Moran,
No questions.
Mr. Mikes?
This might be a newbie question here, but and just kind of high level, do we get a lot of usage out of our facilities?
We really do. We have a lot of community groups that use our fields for sports activities quite extensively. We have programs like the ones you heard public comment from tonight that use our classrooms after hours. And you have other groups that use our media centers and cafeterias and gyms. You know, similar to how you have athletic events happening on our fields, you have basketball programs and volleyball programs, et cetera, using our gyms. And so it is a fairly robust program.
Mr. Owens?
I really like that we didn't change the difference between a for-profit and a nonprofit. I think that's important. That delineation to me doesn't mean much, especially when you hear from the speakers that we had today. Can you, I believe this was answered last time we spoke about it, but certain organizations have different maybe contracts, right, or agreements. It's not broken down per field. So, but a per field, right, $5 more per hour. Looking outside, we've got 2 baseball, 3, 3, 4. Is that one field right outside here? Verado middle, is that the football field, soccer field, or how much does it entail?
It really depends on the site. So if I'm thinking of the correct school, I think Verado is broken up into 4 different fields. So it really just depends on how each individual site is structured.
Got it. Cool. Thanks.
Ms. Wallace?
I don't have any questions. I do feel like our fields could use some work. And I'm all for supporting people that are going to be maintaining those and the additional cost of that. I just think that we definitely need to be able to see that happening. I think if people are paying more and we're saying that's what we're doing, and I understand we maybe haven't hired these people yet or they haven't been working long, but I think that the community, the renters, the the parents need to see an improvement in some of our fields when we're saying over the last year that that is our focus.
I don't have any questions on this section.
All right. Our maintenance and operation revenues, which support a majority of our people and programs, is driven primarily by weighted student count of our enrollment. The formula is a process by which the state provides different levels of funding per student based on varying student characteristics. Based on our demographic forecast by applied economics, we anticipate slight growth next year. I'm also anticipating that the 2% legislatively supported inflation adjustment is provided on the base support level per student. This results in estimates of $75.4 million in revenue from the standard funding formula and $11.7 million from our 15% override. These components are then complemented with funding for transportation provided by the state and smaller adjustments. At this point, I estimate that we will have 88 million of recurring M&O revenues next year. By looking at a multi-year M&O forecast, we can better put these figures into context for decision-making. We presently believe M&O will end the year utilizing some amount of fund balance. Current estimates are that these funds will be supporting our M&O operations by 200,000 to 2 million this year. The slide shows a figure in the middle of that range at 1,170,000. As we go forward through the years, a 2% raise is assumed. This results in a little over $4 million annual deficit by the end of the forecast period, but we'll come back to that in a moment. This slide shows a similar forecast for our reserve funds. The projection shows that we will have reserves available to spend going into next year and even forecasted at the end of next year. We are forecasted to first dip below our top reserves target in 2026-2027 if no additional cuts are made. These two slides combined tell a story that we still need to continue looking at spending next year and that we need to target having a balanced budget going into 2026-2027 to help ensure we protect our financial position. If you've been watching our budget process for a couple of years, you will know that there's a decent bit of uncertainty and that many times at the end of the year, spending is less than we anticipated. This is largely because of encumbrances or holds on funds in our system for spending that our schools and departments tell us that they intend to incur, but do not end up coming to fruition. In many cases, for example, for contracted staff, a purchase order is put in place for the whole fiscal year and not reduced as much as it should be as we get closer to the end of the year. I also think it's important to note one major influence on these projections. I'm actually going to go back a couple of slides to better allow you to see it as I talk you through it. If you look 12 rows down, and I'll pause for a moment so you can count, on the table, you'll see a row labeled SPED and ELL changes, and then in parentheses, it says enrollment. For 2026, we're adjusting expected spending by 1.4 million, and in 2027 by 1.7 million. This is not planned spending. This is calculated by looking at trends in our special education enrollment and spending. If you take this adjustment out, it shows a much different financial picture. For example, if this special education spending does not come to fruition in fiscal year 2026, we would instead be utilizing 1.3 million in reserves at the end of 2026. Depending on where this fiscal year lands with encumbrances we previously discussed, this could make fiscal year 2026 close to balanced. Most of the 1.3 million overspending that would remain after removing the special education adjustment is coming from the assumption that we end this year overspending our recurring resources by 1.1 million. If instead this year ends with the district overspending recurring M&O resources by 200,000, it would move the estimated overspending at the end of 2026 to 400,000. As we continue tonight's presentation, you should also see some familiar numbers from this slide. The cost for all budget proposals being discussed tonight are included in the 2026 column. And that's not an assumption that you approve it. It's to give you the information that you would need to make a reasonable decision on if you want to approve it. I walked you through the multi-year forecast in such detail for a couple of reasons. First, to really bring home why the team is comfortable with these recommendations, but also to bring attention to why going into next year, it will be a strategic initiative to get a better handle on special education spending and how we can remove some of the uncertainty it brings to our planning process. Before we move on, I'm going to pause for questions on the financial context before handing it off to Sandy to begin our discussion on specific budget priorities.
Ms. Moran.
I don't have any questions, but I have two comments. The first is that even under a really worst case scenario, I'm comfortable with 25 and 26, knowing that there are many unknowns in this scenario. But I love the fact that you're saying there's a chance that we might come out even better than that. So I hope that's where we end up.
Me too.
But obviously, yeah, the special ed is a massive unknown because so much of what we do for that is non-funded. So yeah, any ideas folks have for lowering that is fantastic.
Mr. Mikes.
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Owens.
Yeah, I agree with Board Member Moran. It's nice to see that, those things have been considered or the possibility. There's other things, and I don't want to jump ahead or get too far ahead of myself or just the school district, but, as we look at other opportunities such as L. Thomas Heck and repurposing that campus and additional revenue that we don't have factored in, it might be beneficial down the road. So where, 05 or 25, 26 look good, we might be in a better position even in 27 too.
Ms. Wallace.
No questions. I'm loving how it's looking.
I don't have any questions. I like how it's looking too. I don't like where you want to take our special education conversation later, but we'll get to that later.
Well, and I don't want that comment to be misconstrued. It's not that we're talking about cutting anything. It's that we're trying to wrap our heads around the spending to be able to remove some of the uncertainty.
I totally understand that. I'm not
Okay.
trying to say that we're trying to get rid of anything at all. I just know that it will be, whatever we're doing, it's still going to be difficult conversation, and it's going to take a lot of hand holding for a lot of people to understand that. So
Yes.
we can move on though.
Members of the governing boards.
We cannot hear you.
I'm sorry. Madam President, members of the governing board, Superintendent Davidson, colleagues and community, we will now move into our proposal for base level increase for those individuals hired after January 8th, 2025. In addition to the 2% increase, you will note recommended changes that allowed us to bring 16 positions and 31 employees in alignment with the compensation study findings. These changes reflect the research we did on each individual employee to ensure employees impacted by the compensation study findings were either replaced on the placement chart, honoring their years of experience, or the proposed 2% raise, whichever was in the best interest of the employee. In further pursuit of providing the best possible compensation package to our employees, we requested proposals to examine our insurance benefits. We are currently completing the best and final offer review with the insurance committee in preparation to bring forward their recommendation for your consideration. It is important to note that when we requested the proposals, we asked that insurance providers match our existing benefits as best possible or even enrich them if they would. On the next two slides, you will see the plan structures for ASBATE, our current carrier, and Cigna, the two firms being considered as part of the best and final process for our medical coverage for the 25-26 school year. As you can see, the expected ASBATE plan structures for next year remain unchanged with one exception, excuse me. When you look at the HDHP, you will notice the two figures in red, and that exception is the deductible to the high deductible health plan, which is changed each year by the Internal Revenue Service. So, and that's a piece that we have to comply with. Moving to the Cigna proposal, you will note that the copay gold, classic gold, and high deductible health plan remain with an additional change in the classic gold plan, stating that the deductible of $240 for an individual or $720 for family must be met prior to the insurance covering inpatient hospital stays. In summary, the plan designs are nearly identical with both providers. We reviewed the providers used specifically by our employees and found that there was 90% overlap of for the providers most frequently seen by our employees. So we were trying to ensure that they would have access to their same physicians. We anticipate a pure renewal with no change in carrier to reflect a 4.7% cost increase. In scenarios where there are changes in medical or ancillary cover providers, next year's benefits would reflect an increase of 2.8% to 3.76%. We hope this demonstrates the value of this review that we have done after so many years. We anticipate the actual renewal information from ASBATE this Friday, the 28th, and have scheduled a meeting with the insurance committee for Monday, March 3rd, to review that data and work with the committee to prepare our final information for your consideration on Thursday, March 6th. Prior to Mr. Vaughn continuing our discussion, we're happy to respond to any questions you may have at this time.
Ms. Moran?
I don't have any questions, but I am appreciative of the thoughtful consideration that went into this process, and that we're looking not only at the costs, which we need to do as good stewards, but also not only the costs to the district, which we need to do as board members, but costs to our employees as well, and looking at what's going to impact them, which is, do you have to change doctors? Because that's a really big deal. So I'm glad that we took some of those things into consideration.
Thank you.
Mr. Mikes?
Yeah, to echo Ms. Moran, as far as what she said, as far as making sure we're taking care of our employees as far as being able to stay with their doctors and taking all that into consideration is appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Owens?
Yeah, appreciate the continued efforts. Looking forward to the final result
Great.
on Thursday.
Right.
Ms. Wallace?
I just thank you for looking into catching the teachers up that need to be brought up. And while we were hopeful that we would find some unicorn insurance that would be cheaper and provide better benefits, I thank you for doing the work and figuring out that we may just have it as good as it can be for now. So thank you for that.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, this is a lot of work and definitely something that needed to be done since we have pretty much not done it ever. So I appreciate that you guys took the time and have been doing this, and I'm excited to see what the results of all this is at our meeting next week. And I too want to thank you for looking into the doctors, because a lot of places don't care. They're like, oh, this is cheaper for us. So, oh, well, for you guys, I know we've had to change doctors multiple times through my husband's work. So thank you for checking that and trying to make sure that that works for our teachers, because that is a pain. So we can move on to the next item.
This slide and the next are repeats from our last time together, but we believe it's important context to our work on the performance pay system. The research on performance pay in K-12 education shows that it has mixed results on teacher performance and retention. In fact, it most frequently causes those who do not receive all eligible performance pay to leave the organization. Based on a review of this research, we set 3 goals for a restructure of our performance pay systems. The first being to develop a cascading performance pay structure to align with the cascading evaluation system being developed. The second, to separate qualitative performance evaluation from compensation to allow for a focus on employee growth and development. And the third, to better align our compensation structures to those more frequently seen in our industry to aid in both recruitment and retention. As we begin delving deeper into the research on educator development, we found several studies which broke a teacher's career into distinct periods of growth and development. Within the first 2 years, new educators are focused on learning the profession and developing survival skills that allow them to be successful. And I put that in quotes because I truly did pull that directly from the research, survival skills. By the 3rd year, those educators are more comfortable in their role and begin looking for growth opportunities beyond their individual classrooms. In the district's present performance pay structures, there is a teacher leader project introduced in the 4th year of teaching. This already aligns well with the research on the different stages of teacher development. However, we believe we have an opportunity to expand this concept to teachers at all stages of development as part of a systematic way to aid in their development. In this expanded teacher leader project model, we would propose having the teacher leader project focused on different aspects of development at different stages in an educator's career. In the first 2, the teacher leader project would be compensating the employee for spending time taking advantage of resources the district provides to help them to develop those survival skills discussed in the research, such as self-guided professional development for new teachers, engaging with a mentor in like content, or observing master teachers teach. In the 3rd year of teaching, the expectation would become the development of leadership skills by engaging in student-driven opportunities on campus, such as tutoring or club sponsorship. At the 4th level, educators would work with their site administrators to either continue development through engaging in further student-driven opportunities or begin to take on site-wide leadership roles, much like the current teacher leader project model. Beyond these programmatic changes, we're also proposing a financial restructure of the plan to better align our compensation with the industry norms and provide flexibility and options for our employees. The next several slides are all structured in the same way, with the left-hand side of the slide reflecting our current reality and the right-hand side representing our proposal. This slide represents a restructuring of our M&O-based performance pay for educators. On the next slide, we will also discuss a restructure of our classroom site fund-based performance pay. The first item I'd like you to notice on this slide is that totals in both areas are the same. This is not a budget balancing initiative. Instead, it is simply a restructure of the compensation being provided. The next is setting the compensation for evaluation and student growth coefficients to 0. This is needed to complete the separation of the evaluation instrument from the performance pay structures. You'll also see the expansion of the TLP to all levels. The compensation for completion of the teacher leader project is also increasing. Under our current model, the TLP is worth $1,100. Under the proposed model, a level 1 TLP would be worth $1,100, and the value of a TLP would increase until level 4 when it's just shy of $2,000. The remaining funds would be shifted to base compensation and would allow employees an option on when they receive this compensation, either at the end of the year like they're used to, or in their biweekly paycheck. This slide shows the current structure of our classroom site fund-based performance pay and the proposed restructure of that compensation. We are recommending removing the professional development requirement and limiting the professional contribution to 15 hours of community engagement contributions outside of the contracted day. These could be engagements in family nights or attending school athletic events as a couple of examples. We do not believe that this will result in any additional work from our employees, but simply the opportunity to document and be compensated for the work that the employees are already doing. We are also recommending that no compensation be tied to Standard 6, the current student achievement metrics in the existing evaluation instrument. We will discuss this further on an upcoming slide. We are also recommending a shift of the majority of the classroom site fund performance pay to base compensation. This slide shows a summary of the prior two slides, showing that almost $5,000 to $7,000 would be shifted to base pay compensation with no change in total compensation. This slide shows the increase in biweekly gross pay if an educator at each level were to elect to receive this base pay on a biweekly basis versus at the end of the year. Our intention is to have this be an option, not a requirement. If the employee better appreciates receiving the large payout at the end of the year, they can elect to do so and would see no change in the timing of their compensation. Throughout this discussion, we've mentioned several structural changes to the program. To summarize, employees would have the option to receive the pay shifted to base in their biweekly paycheck or at the end of the year. The evaluation instrument would be completely separated from compensation, allowing the evaluation process to be truly focused on development. The student growth reflection process would be eliminated, and the 30-hour requirement for professional contribution would be reduced to 15 hours, but be required to be focused on community engagement outside of the contractual day, and Standard 6 would no longer have an impact on performance pay. The removal of Standard 6 from the performance pay system removes student achievement as a consideration. This is important for a couple of reasons. First, student achievement will remain a focus of the evaluation process and will allow for the critical conversations that are necessary to support the growth of our teachers while not depriving them of potential increase in income. Second is that we would like to better align student achievement expectations found in Standard 6 with our overall student achievement goals and outcomes. This would require the expectations to become much more challenging than presently included in Standard 6. By removing Standard 6 from the performance pay structures, the district can raise these expectations without triggering a need to receive 70% approval of teachers in doing so, a requirement that's included in the statutes related to classroom site fund performance pay. We believe that the 70% approval threshold would be very difficult to achieve while making a portion of the performance pay structures much harder to accomplish. We plan to meet with our lead related service providers in this week or early next week to discuss also redesigning their performance pay, considering the same goals and those implemented for teachers. We would also like to rebrand the program with different language to help the employees distinguish between the existing program and this restructure. If approved by the governing board, we will also record a video to help our impacted employees better understand the new compensation structures being implemented for the new year. We'll pause here for questions in our proposed changes for educator performance pay before discussing our proposal for administrator performance pay.
Ms. Moran.
I really like this. And the reason that I really like this is because for years as a board, we have said that the way we define and distribute performance pay was not in line with what we were saying we wanted out of performance pay. instead of just distributing the performance pay, we tried to tie it to an evaluation, and then the evaluation became less effective because we didn't want to penalize anyone that wouldn't get the full amount. So under this innovative idea, we are saying we want to be truthful in our evaluation of you so that you can be a better teacher and you can learn where your weaknesses are, because we all have them. But we're not going to tie that to your compensation. So that is really examining our current system and being able to wrap our heads around where we wanted to be. And then now this is a way for us to actually get there. So I really appreciate this because it makes a lot of sense to me. I don't love that we still have to call it performance pay for some of the parts, but I will get over that. My question, or what I would like to clarify or just kind of point out, is on slide 43, and you say this on slide 44 still at the end of the year, but for any teachers that might be watching, I just want to point out that the TLP and the community engagement piece are still tentative on them doing something to earn that. And that's why that will be paid out at the end of the year, regardless of what option they choose. But the shift to base for everything else is really theirs now.
Turn this off, which is what allows us to give that option of when to receive it. Because if it were to remain performance pay, I couldn't give the option to receive it in the biweekly paycheck because I can't pay it before they've earned it. So by shifting an amount to the base, that's really what allows us to give that option.
Okay. I love it. No further questions.
Mr. Mikes?
I like this a lot, and one of the reasons is because if you can tell me to get a chance to get more money in the pockets of teachers, straightforward, here, you're teaching, come to it for this, here's the amount we're going to pay you. Also with this, in regards to performance pay, being a part of revamping an entire evaluation system myself and being a part of numerous evaluations and observations and performance discussions, to truly use this to understand the purpose of all that, to help drive instruction, to help drive achievement in the classroom. I know sometimes you think that performance piece is what's going to actually drive that achievement, but it really does have that opposite effect. And then this blows open the opportunity to have true dialogue and discussions towards improvement, and takes those handcuffs off, because there is, no matter what the growth is and where the kids are that you get, where you get them and where you take them to, those are obviously important things. But if you just don't hit that number, but you've done a ton of other stuff to get those kids to that point, there shouldn't be a penalty. There shouldn't be, hey, sorry you didn't make it there, or how do we have this discussion about what do we label you, something in the evaluation tool or anything like that. So I like that it's straightforward. I like that it opens, like I said, and the evaluation tool can truly be used for what I think it should be used for. So that's what I have to say about that.
Mr. Owens?
Yeah, I totally agree with the previous two board members' comments. And like the fact that there is still some type of actual performance pay tied to student achievement.
Ms. Wallace?
No questions. I love that this would be base pay, that we could tell our teachers much more simply, this is what we're going to pay you. It looks better in writing, in their contracts, that it's going to look at like an increase because it is now a guaranteed amount, not a amount set by performance. I love the 15 hours still outside of that. We all know that our teachers are participating in a lot of out of contract time. So keeping some funds held back to reward them or compensate them for their out of contract time is important. So I love that aspect of it. And I love that we're simplifying this and making their pay easier to understand and to see in one bucket.
I like that we took away the professional development part and made it all community because we offer a lot of professional development. So nobody should ever not have had that before, ever just during their contract hours. And this requires them to do stuff, which most of our staff is already doing anyways. So it's just rewarding them for things they're already doing, but maybe it might incentivize some a little bit more that aren't doing it as much to make sure that they do it. Because I bet we had some people that just did all 30 hours of professional development before and didn't have really any community stuff. So now they're gonna have to, and I'm okay with that because those are the extra enhanced things that make school a great place to be, right? Is those extra outside of campus and or outside of the school hours, things that happen on our schools. So thank you guys for really taking the feedback from us of what we've been looking for in this process for a while, a long time, basically the whole time I've been on the board. I feel like we're finally making progress and it's super great. But I think this is a good movement forward in what we're doing. And I feel like I'm excited for the conversations that will be able to happen with our staff with the evaluations going forward. And the idea that that's going to help us to make them more accountable, but in a way that's not penalizing all the time. So thank you. With that, I think we can move on to next section.
I just want to say I'm glad to hear you're as excited about this as I am. So, all right. To truly build a cascading performance pay system, we recommend similar changes to our administrator performance pay. We would recommend shifting all but $2,480 of performance pay to base compensation. This amount aligns with the proposed performance pay for the highest level in the teacher program I just described to you. We would also recommend shifting the performance pay away from an reliance on the evaluation instrument, instead have it connected to our scorecard structures. Our administrators use a scorecard system to set goals that align with the strategic plan, identify action steps to accomplish those goals, and utilize key performance indicators to track progress. This process is very similar to the work done at the superintendent level with the governing board for superintendent performance pay. The goals and implementation of action steps designed in the scorecard process also aligns well with the teacher leader project structures in the educator performance pay system. As a result, this change would align performance pay structures from the superintendency to administrators and ultimately our educators. It would allow us to have evaluation process that's focused on employee development for all employee groups, including our administrators. We would recommend allowing administrators the same option of receiving the pay shifted to the base, either in their biweekly paycheck or at the end of the year. This slide shows what this might look like for those administrators who elect to receive the pay in their biweekly paychecks. We'll pause here for questions on our proposal for administrator performance pay prior to Sandy leading us in the rest of our discussion.
Ms. Moran.
Just for clarification, because I'm not as familiar with the administrative evaluation. So for teachers, we're saying TLP and community engagement results in this balance at the end of the year that you can earn. For administrators, we're saying you earn that year-end balance if you're executing the scorecard,
That would be the proposal, yes.
but that's not part of the evaluation. It's a separate
There's
type of evaluation.
there's elements of the evaluation that would speak to the implementation of the scorecard because of language around strategic planning and those sorts of items. But the scorecard process, I believe, is much newer than our current administrator evaluation. And so there is not a direct tie to the scorecard process in the evaluation.
So would we try to develop a rubric like we use for Dr. Davidson, where it's, here are these things, these are the weights, this is the dollar amounts, or it'll just be much simpler than that? Or I'm just trying to make sure that we're being fair about, that we have a
We-
process for this.
We would, the proposal is to have it fairly simplified, more around actually engaging in the process and implementing it with fidelity than focused on the actual outcomes. And that's truly similar to the TLP in the sense that we're compensating for the effort of pushing us forward strategically, and recognizing the fact that we can do a lot of work that's well-intentioned and track data to see if it's getting us to where we need to be, but we can't always control the ultimate outcome. And so what this is encouraging and compensating for is the process of setting strategic goals, of identifying action steps to allow us to meet those strategic goals, implementing those action steps with fidelity, and tracking data to see if it worked. The scorecard process is truly the way we operationalize our strategic plan, in the sense that how the scorecard is structured is truly with the keystones. And we look at the success criteria to set more specific goals that then result in action steps to meet those goals, and key performance indicators to track this process. So very similar to Dr. Davidson's performance pay, this is really compensating for the operationalizing of the strategic plan.
Okay.
Ms. Moran, may I add to that
Yes.
real quick?
Yes.
What we see as part of the performance of the teacher, that idea of, the TOP as such is you're performing, you're adding value, you're doing something for your respective campus and community. We felt like with that in mind, at the administrative level, the scorecard that's created with goals, with metrics that we'll use and so forth is very similar in that it's action that is required to add value to that site or to that department for that matter. Whereas your question was, do they coincide, that evaluation and the scorecard? The answer is still, it does remain yes, but it is separate in that the outcome of performance pay is around the work in the scorecard, whereas really the outcomes of all that tied to the evaluation, because they do have to coincide, but we can solely focus in on the evaluation, and either you're rocking the scorecard or you aren't, and go through that process versus, hey, you gave 110%, and to Mr. Bond's point, maybe you didn't hit all the metrics, but we still recognize you put in above and beyond. Therefore, here's the connection to that performance pay aspect.
Okay, so what I think I hear you saying is we as district leadership have decided that we are going to utilize this scorecard to help everyone at their respective level implement the strategic plan. And so we need to give them the opportunities to learn how that's done, and we need to evaluate them to make sure they're doing it effectively. And one of the things we're tying to that then is this additional potential pay for doing it effectively. Is that right?
That would be a fair summary. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. No further questions.
Mr. Mikes,
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Owens,
Thank you, Board Member Moran, because that helped clarify what all you said. So thank you. I think my thing also is just, we don't want to create a perception of a double standard, right, for its teachers and administrators. And so I think with that explanation, that helps.
Ms. Wallace,
I agree. I'm all for it being aligned from the top all the way down. So I think this puts it in alignment, and I think it looks great.
thank you for your question, because you explained it and it was pretty much what I was thinking, but I'm glad we explained it to everybody, in that when I think of the scorecard, I think of our goals that we come up with for Dr. Davidson, and then that's the performance or whatever end of the year money, versus when we do the evaluation side, it's a separate piece. So I like that we are making it consistent across all levels it will make it much easier for everyone, and we can just make sure everything aligns all the way down. So thank you guys again for all of the work that's happening to get this put together.
I'm going to now hand it over to Sandy for our continued discussion. Thank you.
Each year, we update staffing at our schools based on defined staffing standards and formulas. We would like to share a summary of proposed changes that resulted from this process this year. As shown, we would see a reduction of 1.0 certified staff funded through M&O for a total reduction of $26,000, the reduction of a 0.5 related services provider. So those are our psychologists, speech language, et cetera. And a reduction of 0.125 full-time equivalent from our classified staff. The related services provider and the classified reductions actually result in a cost increase. The basis for this for the related services provider is the reduction of 2 psychology interns, but the increase of a trained psychologist by 1.5 FTE. In our classified changes, positions collapsed were primarily general education instructional aides based on changes in projected enrollments. These collapses were offset in cost by increases in special education self-contained assistants, who are more highly compensated due to additional hourly stipends these positions receive. The position requests and position modifications presented at our last budget discussion will result in an increased cost to the M&O fund, of a little more than $26,000. This slide shows the cost of other budget initiatives we discussed last meeting. The longevity stipends are expected to cost the M&O fund of $189,000. The compression adjustments for those on the teacher placement chart are expected to cost $91,000, and the improvements to the district's return to work program are expected to cost $47,000 for a total of $327,100. We have also included our slides from the last board meeting in case there are additional questions on those topics. At this point, we are prepared to answer questions on any item we've discussed tonight or in our previous discussion.
Ms. Moran?
I don't have any questions on this section, but I just want to say I appreciate the transparency of you bringing and highlighting to us like a $10,000 change, because that's really immaterial for the whole budget. But I appreciate that it just illustrates to us the level of detail that you and your departments are willing to go to really scour and make sure that we are including everything we need to include and excluding everything that we can.
Thank you.
Mr. Mikes?
Yeah, I was maybe had a question about as far as when the analysis was done, if you could maybe a higher level idea, because it's kind of new to me, where you went out to kind of find that information in order to figure out where those levels would be set when you went out and you assessed other districts, I'm assuming. And
Are you talking about the compensation study
Yeah.
adjustments? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited to talk about that because I love
did I
it.
jump the gun?
But
Okay.
So each year we engage with outside party to help us look at placement charts of other surrounding districts. And we do tend to look at geographically close districts, because when you think about what our compensation needs to allow us to compete in, is in the geographic area for employees. So, for example, we're not competing much with Mesa Public Schools because we're so far apart from Mesa. And so we look at districts that are geographically close to us, and we look at the starting pay on the placement chart. We take an average of those districts, and what we've set our goal to be is to be at least average. So we look at what our placement chart is versus that average. And then the very fun part is looking at each individual employee that is impacted at higher by that placement chart. It is important to understand that once an employee is hired in the district, future compensation is not driven by the placement chart. It's driven by the raises that the governing board approves through the process. But the reason we look at existing employees as it relates to the placement chart is we're trying to avoid compression or the situation when existing employees are paid less than what a very similar employee would make if they came to us new. Because what you experience in districts that don't do that review is it can actually be in an employee's best interest to leave us for a year and then come back. I don't want employees in a position where they can make more money leaving us for a year and then coming back. So what we do is after we determine what that new placement chart would look like to make sure that we're at that average starting pay, we look at the years of experience that employee has and then replace them on the chart. We compare that to what the proposed raise would mean. And so we look at which is more beneficial to the employee, being replaced on the chart, honoring all of their years of experience, just like we would a new hire, or the 2% raise that's being proposed for all employees. And so you can have instances where for some employees in an employee group, the 2% is more advantageous, or you can, and some employees being replaced is more advantageous. That's why that additional work of comparing which is more advantageous to the employee is important, because we're not trying to take compensation away from employees. We're trying to ensure that we're as competitive as we can be. Does that help answer the question?
Yeah, thanks for jumping ahead for me.
Yeah.
Mr. Owens,
No questions.
Ms. Wallace?
No questions, but as I said last meeting, thank you for your work in that. That's very important, and I'm glad that you do that.
I don't have any questions either. Thank you guys for all of this information. It has been very helpful for us as we move forward in this budget discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, we are going to move on now to the next item, which is the middle of year assessment and achievement update. And this is going to be by Dr. Doozy and Mr. Owen. Not to be confused with Mr. Owens that's sitting up here with us. They have very similar names.
And haircuts.
And haircuts, that's true.
Good evening, Madam President and board members, my fellow Abnett cabinet members, and the community, if you're still tuned in. We're going to talk about some achievement. So hopefully we're all still awake. I have some great staff here to help me present today. Brian Owen, our Director of Assessment Accountability, Allison Paterno, our District Literacy Coach, Carrie Farnsworth, District Math Coach, and then myself, Dr. Bridget Doozy, Deputy Superintendent of Academic Success. All right, so the purpose of why we're here with you today is that we would like to provide the board and our community an update on our most recent student achievement data based on our mid-year assessment in our benchmark assessment, iReady, and our Acadience data. This is aligned. This is all about our kids in the way that we prepare them to be ready, the relationships that we build, the connections that we make, and how we're using our resources. So definitely, our overall mission is student success. So I will turn things over to Mr. Owens, and he will get us started.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. I don't have my contacts in, so I actually have to read it from my computer. I just want to give a quick overview of our district benchmark assessment program. They are standards-based assessments. Currently, we administer math, reading, science in August, December, and April/May. These are standards-based tests that are aligned to the state blueprints in those three subject areas of the math, reading, and science components of the state test. I want to show you what the winter data point looks like this year. This is in math and reading. This takes the winter from the current school year, winter 2024, and I'm comparing percent correct to the percent correct on winter last year in 2023. And of course, there is one footnote. The winter test last year was given at a later time in the year. We tested after winter break last year, and we tested before winter break this year. So that could have an impact, but I don't have a way to assess the extent of any impact. But what I see when I look at these percentages, I do want to say also, these are the same tests. So these are comparable data points with maybe a slight caveat that they were given at a slightly different time. I see a lot of consistency. About this time of year last year, students are scoring right about the same place this year as they were last year. And then we'll see that in the next two slides as well. The key student groups that we look at, I see a lot of consistency. This is math and in reading. Let's take a look at science. This is a new science benchmark this year. So we have not given it, we did not give it last year, so I don't have any context to interpret what this increase means. But I will say I was surprised to see a 9 and 10 percentage point increase from August to December. So in my mind, even though I don't have any data to support that yet, I do believe, looking at this, that we're going to see increases in our state science assessment this year. I didn't expect to see quite that large of a jump in those 4 short months. The other thing I like to do is look at the indicators of proficiency. So what we see here is the spring 2024 AASA proficiency. That's the leftmost blue bar for each of the grade levels. So it's math and ELA for the state assessment, and then math and reading for a district assessment. And then we have the proficiency indicator, or our best prediction given current scores in the fall of this year and in the winter of this year. These are the same tests. Over the summer, I went back and aligned last year's benchmarks to the state assessment to realign cut points. So the cut points this year are different than they were last year. And this is what we're looking at. The fall does look a little bit off here in some of the reading distributions. And really that's just because, so the fall is the weakest predictor of performance in April. Once we hit winter, we start to get a little closer to the state assessment time. And also what we see too is more variation in the distribution. Some of these fall data points, because they're first week of school, second week of school, they're low distributions, they have low means, and they have low standard deviations, which means we have a lot of students scoring the same score. And so setting cut points around blocks of students at the same raw score can get a little bit tricky. And then by the winter, we start to see more variation in the distributions, and we can start to then separate groups of performers across the proficiency categories. And these are just a summary of the key observations that I talked about. And then I want to introduce one last thing. For the second year, we administered a civics assessment. This is a high school graduation requirement for the class of 2027. And this we passed, let's see, 1,200 students took the test. More than 84% of them met the passing requirement. And then in May, we're going to administer a makeup assessment, or for any new students, for students that either didn't pass or didn't get the opportunity to take the test.
Can I ask a question really quick about the civics test? Just because I have a senior, obviously we didn't do it before then and they do it now. When they take this test, do they have to take this with no help of any kind?
When The test, yes, during the live test session, right? We run it just like a secure test session where they can't get help or use their notes.
It's just to point out, at the high school level, that is not the case. So just
Oh.
checking.
Well, what I would like to point out about this civics assessment results is the fact that we clearly have a high success rate despite not having social studies curriculum in middle school.
Yeah, we do give out a study guide. So materials are distributed to the schools to distribute to students for this test.
Sorry to interrupt you. Okay.
And I'd like to turn it over to Allison Paterno to talk about Acadians data.
Acadians is our universal literacy screener that meets the move on when reading requirements in Arizona Revised Statute 15704. Acadians universal screening is administered one-on-one in the fall, winter, and spring. The Acadians subtests measure early reading skills from kindergarten through 5th grade. These measures are different from and complementary to the district benchmark assessments that Director Owen just spoke about. Acadians measures the foundational sub-skills that it takes to read skillfully, whereas our district benchmarks assess reading comprehension, which is the outcome of those sub-skills. The main role of Acadians, like all universal literacy screeners, is to identify students who are at risk for reading difficulties. Students who fall below or well below the Acadians benchmark targets participate in additional diagnostic assessments to determine their specific needs. When looking at Acadians data, the sub-skill scores are calculated into a composite score that represents the student's overall proficiency. The composite score is the most predictive of a student's likelihood to achieve future reading outcomes. When looking at Acadians data this evening, we'll be looking at the percentage of students who have met the winter benchmark targets in their composite scores. This slide is here so you can see the early literacy skills that are assessed on Acadians in each grade. One important thing to point out is that the benchmark targets increase throughout the year. So when we see even small gains in the percent of students at benchmark, that represents very significant growth in these reading sub-skills. The moving targets is the reason that it's often helpful to compare year-over-year data from the same reporting period, which is what we'll do this evening. Here you'll see our mid-year Acadians data this winter compared to last winter in each grade level. We see that all grades except kindergarten grew in the percentage of students at or above benchmark this winter compared to last winter. The percentage of 3rd grade students at or above benchmark is the same as last year. The largest growth from last winter is seen in 1st grade, with a 5% increase of students at or above benchmark. This data indicates that we are steadily increasing reading sub-skill proficiency and that students are retaining and applying foundational skills over time. And these are the key observations we just discussed as a summary for your reference. iReady Reading is a computer-based adaptive assessment administered to all middle school students in the fall, winter, and spring. Data is reported on the main reading domains: phonemic awareness, phonics, vocabulary, and comprehension of informational and literary text. This slide presents beginning of year to middle of year iReady ELA diagnostic data for all students. I'll pause for just a moment for you to look at the data presented on this slide. This slide presents the same data as the last slide, but it's broken down by grade. In all grade levels, we see decreases in the number of students 2 to 3 grade levels below and increases in students at or above grade level. And now I'll turn it over to Carrie Farnsworth to present math data.
I guess I have to push the right button. Apologize. All right. Next, we will review the iReady Math Diagnostic, which is an adaptive assessment administered to all K-8 students in the fall, winter, and spring. By adjusting question difficulty based on student responses, it efficiently pinpoints the student's ability level. The assessment measures understanding across 4 key mathematical domains: number and operations, algebra and algebraic thinking, measurement and data, and geometry. Growth goals are set based on national averages with the aim of exceeding 100% of typical growth each year, ensuring meaningful progress toward grade level proficiency. This data helps teachers personalize instruction, provide targeted support, and monitor student growth. When comparing our district-wide fall performance to national and state benchmarks, our initial placement data closely aligned with national norms. As we examine our fall to winter relative placement change, we see meaningful shifts in student performance, reflecting both individual placement changes or individual progress and collective growth. These insights allow us to refine instruction, provide timely support, and stay focused on our year-end growth goal of exceeding 100% of typical growth. As we analyze fall to winter growth, we see shifts in student placements, indicating progress across all grade levels. This slide helps highlight movement between proficiency levels, showcasing the impact of instruction and our targeted interventions. Notably, we see an increase in the percentage of students performing at or above grade level, and a decrease in those performing 2 or more grade levels below. A significant portion of our student population remains in that 1 grade level below category. We see similar trends in our middle school grades, with students making progress across proficiency levels. This slide shows the median growth across all placement levels within each grade level, where the median represents that middle student sitting between the least growth and the most growth in our data. At this point in the year, the expected growth was 56% toward that typical annual growth. There are notable celebrations in both 1st and 5th grade. Across all grade levels, the data shows that students in that 2 and 3 or more grade levels below have demonstrated the most growth. An area of opportunity is supporting the growth of students who are ready for grade level instruction and beyond. And here is a summary of the key observations we talked about. And I'm going to hand it over to Dr.
So as with any other data that we use, really it's about how we use this data in the cycle of continuous improvement. And so we really need to make decisions on how we take this data and move ourselves into action. Oops. So the first action step I'd like to share is how the scorecard work is applied into that continuous improvement cycle. Each site leader, we've provided this to the community and to the board as an overarching as a district. Each school is able to look at this data based on their site specifically. And based on that data, they were able to do a reflection with their scorecard. And I've just shown a sample up here on what the process looked like with their guiding coalition or their leadership team, where they reviewed each of their achievement goals and their other goals for their other keystones and really tracked it to say, are we on target? Are we above target? Are we on target? Are we still in progress? Do we still need to address some areas? And then also looking at those action steps on the scorecard to say, okay, what action steps have we completed? What action steps are still in progress? What action steps have we not started yet that maybe we do need to get started on, or maybe we need to abandon that action step because we found it not to be as relevant or meaningful? And then what action steps do we need to add to our scorecard to get to the results that we seek? And then as you can see, I've put a model on what one of the scorecards look like from one of our leaders in that process.
Thank you. So I want to talk about some of my action steps with this data that I share. created more data reports for this winter administration than I think I have for any other district administration. But the thing is, just looking at a data report isn't going to solve anything. So what I focus on is going out to schools and training. What reports do we have available? What are they telling us? How to find them? I've created a number of custom reports also, and I also do other trainings like searching through the item banks to create their own assessments for CFAs and knowledge checks. And of course, this is the main one that I do so that to help them create their own assessments is creating, publishing, and administering assessments at the school sites. I'll turn it over to Allison.
Immediately following winter testing window, each site's reading specialist worked with grade level teams to analyze Acadians and diagnostic data. They grouped students according to similar needs and have been providing targeted interventions and enrichment. This slide shows an example of the sorting grids used here at Litchfield Elementary School. This example is from a second grade class, and you can see how it guides teachers through collaborative data-based decision-making using universal screening and diagnostic data. A similar process happened at all campuses that serve kindergarten through 5th grade students. Director Wood and I also met with each elementary principal to look at their Acadians data. We identified trends and planned action and support in any areas that were concerning. Together, we also looked at the Move On When Reading student watch list that Director Owen creates for us. We made sure that interventions and instructional supports are being provided to each student on this list whose data was flagged as consistently low. As a reminder, MOER legislation from ARS 15710 requires that an Arizona student not be promoted from 3rd grade if the student does not demonstrate sufficient reading skills on the reading portion of AASA. This action step is an extra layer of protection in supporting students who are at risk of falling into that category. Our team of reading specialists is continuing to provide intensive professional development on the science of reading, which directly influences our teachers' instructional practice in teaching the basic reading skills reflected in this data. Our reading specialists and I developed this PD series to meet the legislative requirements of ARS 15501, which mandates that all K-5 teachers who teach literacy in any capacity earn their literacy endorsement by 2028. We're very proud to be the only district in the entire state of Arizona to have our own coursework on ADE's list of approved trainings. This offers the benefit of providing our teachers not only in-depth training on the science of reading for free and during their professional day, but also allows us to contextualize that knowledge so that our students, our programs, and our systems and our curriculum are reflected in that. We'll complete Part A in April, and we'll begin Part B next year. I'd be happy to work with Dr. Doozy, Executive Director Benjamin, and Director Wood to provide more information about this initiative if you'd be interested. Sorry, I forgot to advance to that slide. A committee has been working on a framework to guide ELA database decision-making at the middle school level as well. Our goal is to increase consistency in how to use the data to group students and provide targeted support at all tiers of instruction. You can see in the draft presented that it uses iReady data and our district benchmark data to sort students into 4 main groups. And for each of these groups, instructional adaptations and resources are recommended to scaffold and support students at each tier. This is in draft form. It's been introduced to some teacher teams who are providing feedback and will also be taken to our instructional coaches and middle school principals to make revisions. And with that, I'll turn it over to Carrie Blanford.
All right, tonight I will be highlighting 4 key action steps currently underway to strengthen mathematics instruction and student learning. First, each school has hosted an iReady professional learning specialist for a full day session by selecting a topic and a date that best fits their needs. These sessions provided targeted professional development to strengthen math instruction and support student achievement. Topics have included making math accessible through purposeful questioning, supporting productive struggle, and differentiated strategies and scaffolds. The goal was to deepen teacher content knowledge and ensure students receive the support they need to succeed. Second, site-based math specialists have worked with grade level teams to identify students and provide targeted support by bridging prerequisite skill gaps to ensure those students have access to grade level Tier 1 instruction. Additionally, instructional coaches have explored effective teaching practices, routines, and strategic teacher moves to enhance student learning in grade level mathematics. They then collaborated to create teacher training that was aimed to strengthen instruction and increase student engagement. Lastly, each quarter during district-wide professional development, a teacher from each team has met in grade level bands to strengthen Tier 1 instruction. These sessions have focused on engaging students in the standards for mathematical practice and planning routines that foster meaningful student discourse. Do you guys have any questions for us?
Ms. Moran, did you have questions?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment, which is to say that this is not, figuring out the action steps is not my area of expertise. I definitely rely on, all of you to know what you're doing when it comes to that. But what I can appreciate out of this presentation is that I have felt the shift from being primarily reactive to the data to now reacting, but also taking proactive steps to get us where we need to be. And that reaction piece seems more agile to me than it ever has been before. And I think part of that is because of the way we are gathering and disseminating the data and the information. And I think Brian always knew the power of the data, but now more of our teachers and our administrators and campus site leaders and all that understand the power of that also, because you all have helped to explain how it can be applied better. So I look forward to seeing the fruits of your labor and all of these action steps being put into place. But I appreciate, again, just what strikes me about this entire board meeting tonight is the thoughtful action that this team is putting into the work that we're doing. And I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Mr. Mikes.
Just a curiosity question. I don't know the answer. How long have we used iReady? And then the same with the Acadians.
So this is our third year using iReady, and then Acadians has been around a very long time.
Used to be called
previously it was
Dibbles.
called Dibbles.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
just kind of curious on
Yeah.
the implementation.
I can say Dibbles has probably been around since 2000. Yeah, like 2002, 2003, we're guessing.
Okay. All right. That was my curiosity question. This is insane, on the data breakdown to me and what you guys are doing with it. So often we have all this data and we're swimming around in it, and then we don't have a so what piece. It's like, oh, hey, thanks. This is not going well with reading, or this is, we're making growth here, but if somebody said, oh, how do you use these assessments? I mean, you could show them this PowerPoint with the comparison of the data and then linking the action steps to it and how it's actually being implemented in the classroom is amazing to me to see how fine-tuned it is. And so I appreciate how you attacked it. And I guess my one question after that is, as it finally gets back down into, hopefully we can get back into the Tier 1 instructional pieces, how are these conversations evolving and helping with the impact of what's going on in the classrooms then after all of this? Maybe just a kind of a generalized kind of high level thought on that.
So just to clarify your question as far as how does this data impact Tier 1 instruction?
Yeah.
Yes, so as all the principals are working on their scorecard and raising student achievement, Tier 1 practices, those best practices definitely is an action step to enhance. We've been doing a lot of work around our high impact teams and what we call lift form, which is feedback on those tier 1 best practices. So really drilling down by team, by grade, what are the practices that are well established? What are the practices that we need to increase to get better results? So really, it's up to the principal and their guiding coalition to take this data and then apply it to the relevant teams based on what they need. So because each grade level team, and a lot of times right now, the teachers even, it wasn't a requirement this year, but a lot of the principals not only did grade level goals for reading and math, but each of their teachers also did goals based on their class. So really it's very individualized on what they need to do to impact their tier 1 instruction.
Thank you.
Mr. Owens?
Definitely want to reiterate the work that was done and the power of the numbers and the data, and how also I'm not an expert on trying to micromanage on how to, increase the numbers. That's on you, and that's, I get paid the big bucks. But I do have a couple things that I would like to see as far as the data. I understand that we're using the data to identify students where they need to move, where they need extra instruction and whatnot. But you have it on one slide where you compare us to the national average and the state average. I personally would really like to see as many metrics as possible where we stack up against a national, a state average, and even maybe a couple of the top performing districts in the state, where we, again, use this data at our district level and on an individual basis for our students. I think it's important for our community members. I think it's important for our students to know, and there might be some that's not, right? If it's district assessment, but if it's a standardized test, wherever there's opportunity, I would appreciate the opportunity to see that, because I think that paints a bigger picture, especially when we are outperforming, where a 43% looks dismal, but compared to a 37 or a 38 average, wow, okay, we're performing better than everybody else, or a majority of people.
Absolutely. And for our ASA data, we'll definitely have that prepared for you, because we are able to compare ourselves against our comparable districts, our peer groups, correct, Brian? Our peer groups, as well as, the top performers in the state. So we'll definitely have that prepared for you when we do our final outcome report. You are correct. The benchmark assessment is our own internal test, so we don't really have a comparison, but iReady, they share with us national with other schools that are using iReady. And then Acadians, I'm not sure who they're. Okay, yeah, so definitely that's something we can bring back to the board, maybe for the year end to see how we compare nationally to other schools that use Acadians as an assessment tool for that reading readiness.
Okay, and maybe you can ask them why we can't bring back Dibble. I like that more. But one last question, and so if we have students that are performing at 3 grade levels below in both math and reading, why are they in a higher grade, right? If you have a 2nd grader or a 4th grader who in 3rd grade was reading at 2 or 3 grade levels behind, and in math at 2 or 3 grade levels behind, why did they? Is there a statute, a law? What is the reasoning for advancing them the next grade? At least the district policy or state standards or whatever it is, just to have an understanding, because now that students further behind and they never mastered it again. So big picture, if you can explain that. And I know it's outside the data, but it is a more.
So what I'm able to share with you this evening is there's a lot of variables that we look at when we are looking at retention or promotion of a student. And so promotion or retention is a type of intervention. It's not the answer for all interventions. By state statute, we do look at, under the law, we do look at their academic performance, their attendance. I will say that some students that are 2 to 3 grade levels below, it's not uncommon that they also are identified as a student with a disability. And so the IEP team, their individual education program team, would determine if retention or promoting them, whichever way they decide, which one is the best intervention based on their category of disability. Because if you have a disability, that might not be an intervention strategy that will really benefit you as a student because your disability is not going to change by your grade level you're in. You might continuously need personalized, individualized instruction throughout your entire education to get you to be where you are a successful adult. So typically when students are that far below, there's other things, other factors. It could also be our students that are showing less proficiency as English language learners. So taking those tests does require skills in language. And so sometimes we see that. And so again, same consideration. The teacher team will have to decide. The teachers actually by statute are the ones that decide on promotion or retention. And so they'll use their data to determine if it's the right intervention for that student. So
Yeah, and the reason I asked that question is just to reinforce how important the data is, because then that data allows us to identify those individual students and give them the assessment or the figure out and identify them, and whether it be an IEP or, unfortunately, a retention or not, but regardless, we have that data. So.
yes, sir. Yes.
Ms. Wallace?
I don't have any questions. I always loved data as much as a kindergarten, first grade teacher hates doing those tests because that grade level is very time intensive. I always loved getting the data back and seeing that growth. So I love seeing the data here. And then I know the slide kind of jumped or missed on 30, slide 30 there. But I absolutely love that we are teaching the science of reading. Reading is such a complicated thing to teach comparatively to math. Math is very black and white. Reading is very gray area and very hard to understand the science behind. And I love the action step there of continuing to provide that professional development. So I know you said you were really excited about that, and that is my favorite slide as far as the different steps that we're doing. So thank you for that.
I don't have any questions. Thank you guys for this information. It's a lot of information, but it's really helpful for us to kind of see where we're at, where we've been, where we're headed for the end of the year. I'm excited too to see where our science goes because that science looked really awesome. I know we don't have anything to compare it to in the past, but it looks really good for this year. So I'm going to have fingers crossed that that means really good things for us at the end of the year when we do our end of year assessments. And thank you guys for just continuously trying to improve our processes so that our kids can keep doing better and learning more. So thank you.
Thank you. And President Saidema, if you don't mind if I make one more comment just about our team here behind me. They're all members of our district guiding coalition that was started about 6 months after I started in my position. And I can just tell you that just how much support and a foundation of love and empowerment and those action steps that are happening at schools wouldn't be possible without our district guiding coalition. And they're in the background. They don't really get a lot of attention or kudos for the hard work they do. So I just wanted to just thank them. It's only part of our team here tonight, but definitely appreciate their hard work and efforts in helping support our schools.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to the three of you that have hung out with us to this very long meeting tonight to come share your stuff at the very end. We really do appreciate it. And it was engaging enough that we're all still awake and paying attention. And we really love the information. Thank you guys so much. Again.
Madam President, before they leave as well, if you don't mind, I'd just like to make a comment. I do think Miss Moran was kind of reading my mind. That's happened the last few meetings. But often I get accused of stealing people's thunder, but Bridget just stole mine. And I also just want to add, Mr. Owens, Ryan, your comment cracked me up because we do look at data. We do ask for what probably feels like random or strange requests as relates to numbers. But I think many of you nailed it. It's what do we do with that? And so to Bridget's point on applauding our team is working really hard to support our staff, those in the trenches, but doing it in a way that's teaching them, not just giving them information, but teaching them how to use that information to make gains on behalf of our students. And so I just want to, highlight overall the work that you all are doing, and thank you. And thanks for bearing with us with our odd requests sometimes. So thank you, Ms. Idema.
Okay. That wraps up all of the items on our agenda. So Mr. Owens, this is your cue.
Move to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Having a motion from Mr. Owens and a second from Ms. Wallace, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Moran,
Yay.
Mr. Mikes,
Yay.
Mr. Owens,
Yay.
Ms. Wallace.
Yay.
I'm also a yay. Motion passes. Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.